OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
At 7:30, you're very welcome along this Tuesday morning to OTB AM. It's Gilroy and Shane Hannon with you all the way through until 10 today. That means we've got a snooker flavour to the show this morning. Ken Doherty's going to join us just around about 20 past 9. We're also talking boxing with impresario Eddie Hearn around about 9:40. Big week for Eric Donovan in particular. He's fighting this Friday. Next week we have Katie Taylor back in action, and obviously there is ongoing doubts about what's going to happen in the heavyweight division. So we'll cover all of that with Eddie Hearn around about 9:40 this morning. Andy Mitten's going to join us at 10 past 8. He's in Germany following Manchester United and their progress last night with a late 1-0 win, courtesy of an extra time penalty in against Copenhagen, has put them through to the next round where they'll face the winners of Sevilla and Wolves. So there's a European trophy right there for them if they can just kick into a bit of form. Maybe the form was actually quite good last night and they come up against an inspired goalkeeper. We'll talk through all of that with Andy Mitten. As ever, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Pretty easy to remember. Apparently it's an important number in that sport where they throw the thing at the other thing. Let's get into it though. This morning we're going to hear from Paul McGinley, who's looking back at the USPGA, talking with Joe. And also first though, here is Dave McGreevy, Secretary and founder of the East Belfast GAA Club, which has been in the news quite a bit over the last week or so. Have a look.
Now, you're very welcome back. So I'm not sure our next guest ever intended to be a founder of a GAA club, but that is what he is, all a bit unplanned perhaps. And this new GAA club has come into existence in a part of Belfast not exactly known as the beating heart of Gaelic games. East Belfast GAA Club has come into existence this year. It has won plaudits aplenty right across Belfast and the island. Unfortunately, as well, as you may have seen this week, it has been the target of people very much stuck in the past. At the PSNI have had to search grounds. There have been legitimate threats found. Thankfully, nobody hurt and things didn't get too serious, but they are still serious nonetheless. And despite all that, the club played its first hurling game at the weekend. So it's been an eventful time for Dave McGreevy, founder of East Belfast GAA Club. Dave, how you doing?
Not too bad, Joe.
So this is an interesting time, an eventful time in your life. Just give us the brief potted history of your life and times up until East Belfast GAA Club came into existence. I know you were over in London and you played with that London team that made the Connacht final.
Yeah, so I was back 2013 and I played on to 2016, and then I got old and just the opportunity kind of just came up to move home. So it's come up to 3 years now since I moved home. Initially, I was only really looking at 6 months to see what I thought of it. But as the story goes, met a girl, settled down. I actually got engaged last Tuesday as well. So, you know, an eventful week all around.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you moved home. Were you playing any sport in Belfast or just busy meeting the girl?
No, I'm from the Connacht, which is about half an hour south of Belfast. So I was playing for my home club, the Connacht. So whenever I came back, we were Division 4 and we're junior championship as well. So I've got to a good few junior championships with them before, but I've never actually won a championship with them before. So the year I came back, nothing to do with me now, but we did win a championship and we won the league, which was very nice. And then kind of, you know, the year afterwards, it was only last season, I was taking the under 16s and then I got asked to take a local team as well. So I was in coaching them and still doing a bit of playing. So this year, you know, I'm trying to retire but failing miserably at it. You know, and then, you know, I've went and started this club, and you can't really start a club and not play for them. So I'm playing away for them. So, you know, that's kind of doing a bit of coaching now as well. I'm meant to be coaching tonight. The Connacht Miners are meant to be playing against Unraked down in Kilkeel tonight, but I don't know if I have a team, so I'll go.
How did this club then come into existence? Why East Belfast? Are you living close now to East Belfast, or are you still you're south?
So my fiance is from East Belfast, and my friend Richard, who's the co-founder, myself and Richard both play rugby for Estonians, and Richard's wife and Nadia are both from East Belfast, so I'm kind of based up here now. So we were kind of chatting about would it be nice to have a GA club in around here that we could send our kids to, because in our own lives, I suppose it's cross community. It'd be nice if it was just cross community and we can kind of maybe start a under 12 team and bring them up. But just sent out that tweet and it's exploded. And, we're still getting, every day you're talking about 24 people just contacting us. Can I join a team? But we have a good structure set up. So whatever I get these now, initially at the start, I was kind of logging them all myself in an Excel sheet. But as soon as we got our validated and affiliated with the GA and down GA, we got our official emails. So I have a team set up now where if people are coming in and want to join, I can send them out to the ladies football or the men's football, the Camogie and Ireland. So all coming together.
And Dave, when did you first send out that tweet looking for people who were interested in a GA club in East Belfast to get in touch? When was that?
10 weeks ago yesterday.
And your phone lit up that morning?
It did, yeah. Although I don't have social media on my personal phone, so I just had it on my other phone. So it was Sunday and I wasn't working, so I didn't really have to look at it. But it was just going crazy all day, and it kind of hasn't really stopped for the whole 10 weeks of this year. Just every day the phone is just going crazy. Just with getting in contact, looking to join, and it's not even ones looking to play. There's a lot of ones. So East Belfast is quite affluent, so you have a lot of people living in this part of the city that are kind of from legal backgrounds and accountancy background professionals, and they're able to offer serious skill sets. So when you have people like that putting their hands up, you can just delegate jobs out to them, and we have an interim board set up. Way at the start, just we got serious. I was incredibly lucky to get these here people and getting in contact. Just absolutely fantastic. We put together like a 6 to 8 week agenda. We worked our way through it. We actually worked our way through it very quickly, and we're kind of now we're at the phase. How do we do our AGM? We're meant to do it last week, but just couldn't. Last week was last week. So we do have a lot of people kind of putting their hands up for the different board positions. So whenever we have that AGM, we've everything kind of set up to do our 5-year plan, and then look at our 10-year plan, and whatever else, and just show that we're a sustainable club.
Yes. And as I understand it, I saw Malachy Clerkin writing in the Irish Times, and he was making the point that really East Belfast hasn't had a GAA club in a long time. St. Columkills, he mentioned, in the early 70s. I think that folded. The father of one of the players was killed in a pipe bomb attack, which, it brings the reality of the situation to the fore. And that was a different time, clearly. To generalize for a moment, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm operating here under generalities. West Belfast, 90% Catholic. East Belfast, 90% Protestant, hence no GAA club, not welcome, people aren't interested. What's the reality on the ground in 2020 when it comes to that whole area?
We've had support from the entire East Belfast community. Everyone across the board. People from here are playing for us. I think it's a bit unfair on how East Belfast, and I would say as myself, whenever me and Richard started this here, we were looking to get an under 12 boys team together and maybe enter a team there next year. But with the amount of people who got in contact, it challenged my perceptions of East Belfast, and actually it's not how it's advertised, and it's actually a very progressive part of not just Belfast, but Northern Ireland and this island. It's people just reaching out, and even there was a few incidents happened up above, and the groundkeepers straight away over this, just, are you okay? You guys are very welcome here, and just made us feel more than welcome. And it's the same, everyone in the community kind of did rally around us, and I got emails off a lot of people I really didn't expect to get an email off, just supporting us and calling us here out. And it's maybe it's something everyone kind of needs to look at it. Like, East Belfast is advertised as this, where actually it's not that. It's completely something else. And this is maybe just the right time to start a club. So everyone can avail of the opportunities that GA brings people.
And so people getting in touch to join, were they largely, and again, I couldn't tell you which of my friends are religious and not religious and who believes in God and who doesn't and all that kind of stuff. So it feels almost antiquated to be talking in these terms, but you'll forgive me. Were the people getting in touch largely maybe Catholics or of that tradition living in East Belfast, and we're thinking, well, great, now I have a GA club in my vicinity? Or did it extend to those of a unionist persuasion who had never anything to do previously with the GA club and thought, oh, interesting, I'll give it a try? Who was coming forward?
Whole mix, because there's never been this part of East Belfast, there hasn't been a GA club in 50 years. So you have people from all backgrounds that have never played before. You know, it doesn't matter what religion they are, getting in touch. But you're getting weird emails saying, I'm a Protestant, can I join? Yes, like, yeah, well, that's what it's about. Like, come and join.
Isn't that terrible that someone had to send that email?
Yeah, but that wasn't once or twice. That's a good few times, and we're still getting it now.
I guess they may feel, look, we're not welcome here,
Well, not at all now. Everyone kind of, well, if you look at myself and Richard, we weren't really that, if you're going to get into it, we weren't really that, we didn't discriminate, and we were choosing our life partners, I suppose. So I suppose it's the ethos of the club, but not that it was intentional, but it seems to be people joining the club just don't really look at the world that way. And I think that's like the majority of people just don't really, like you're saying this here and you don't even want to say the words. And same with me, who looks at the world like that, realistically? So that's the kind of people we're getting joining. And we're having kind of different jokes about it. There's one of the guys plays for the football team, and he was saying way back when he was playing rugby in school, he was playing against Bangor Grammar, and they turned up and all these guys were, massive beasts of guys. And so the joke is now every time we're playing against the team, we're always just like, lads, it's not Bangor Grammar we're playing here. Like, so we're just having wee jokes like that at the moment.
Well, that's amazing. And I think that was definitely the founding principle. This is cross-community. This is Northern Ireland in 2020. Like, the notion that we would be discriminating on grounds of religion or your political views belongs very much in the past. So fantastic. And in terms of being officially recognised, do you have to go to GAA headquarters, down GAA? Is it a difficult thing to kind of get over the line, or how does all that work?
It is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But I would say Sean Og over at Down was fantastic, giving us a hand. And I haven't really reached out to that many people. I could literally count in one hand how many people I've reached out to. I've had so many ones from GAA HQ, from Ulster GAA, Down GAA, and actually Antrim as well, and Belfast, just reaching out. What can we do? How can we help? So there is a whole process you do have to go through. You have to get 15 signatures of players that are going to play, and that's how you do your validation. But that has to go to a county board meeting, so you get affiliated. So there's 48 clubs in Down now, whereas before us there was 47, and every single one of them we'll have these guys in. Right. We'll affiliate them with Down. So the support has been fantastic, but the registrations and transfers are a different story. And the hurling and men's board are the same. So you do your transfers through that, and you do registrations through that. The ladies board's different, and the camogie board's different, and the transfers and the registrations are different again. So for the men's, and this is so boring, but this has been my life.
I do figure, however progressive we get, interclub transfers in the GAA will never be made easy.
And there was a thing way at the start as well. We need to get a clergyman to sign transfers, and there was different.
You need to get a what? Did you say clergyman?
Yeah, you had to get a clergyman if there's an objection. So this kind of came up that, if someone has an objection, and then you know, there's different ones on our board, not from a GAA background, and they were saying, well, I know the vicar, and I was just like, no, it's only for an objection. No one's going to object transferring to us realistically, you know. Well, you would hope so. We haven't had any yet, but, you know, fingers crossed.
Right.
So I was just like, no, and you're trying to update. I mean, when I was talking to Linda initially, I was saying about being our club president.
Yeah, this is Linda Irvine.
Yeah. So she was asking about, I'm very busy, I don't know. And I was just like, it's really, it's a handy one, Linda. You get all the plaudits and none of the work. So you can, if you want to step up and do a bit of work, you're more than welcome to. But it's really, no, it's handy. And, you know, I was explaining to her as well about the politics involved in GAA clubs, and she was just, she couldn't really get her, she didn't believe me to start off with, and I was just like, no. But she's kind of, she's getting used to that. You know, there's a whole new level of bigotry in the GAA world.
Well, thankfully, that's not unique to East Belfast. That's everywhere. And what about facilities, Dave? So, I mean, you're starting effectively from nowhere. Did I read a rugby club nearby gave you some pitches or gave you access?
Yeah, Malone, fantastic. They got in contact with us. They were great guys. But it's not going to work. You're not going to fit a GAA pitch onto a rugby pitch, so it's not going to work. There is other options, but it's very slow getting something done. We do desperately need one, you know, with our memberships. There is the whole, you know, I suppose one of the kind of reasons for us joining, obviously there's physical benefits of playing Gaelic sports. There's also the mental health ones, and just the way the world is right now. You'll have kids there next year and they're not going to be getting PE in schools. So we would love to have the children's, you know, subcommittee set up for them and doing our coaching and everything. And you need to have safe facilities for that. You can't just do it in a park. And, you know, we are chatting to different ones to get that sorted. It's been slow. Whenever, and even kind of last week was like, that was a park we were training in. We were finding it very difficult to book anywhere. We still haven't got a bank account because no banks are opening up new applications. But, you know, the GAA's kind of helped us out a wee bit in getting that moved along, because we were in a queue of 50,000 at one point.
Right.
But it's still not done, and it's difficult to book public spaces if you don't have a bank account. So we're literally just paying for that ourselves at the moment. You know, just the board, we're not going out to members or anything and forcing them to fork out any money. Like, let's say the board is just paying for everything at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose whenever we do have the bank account, we can get the membership in, and then we can be a bit more steady. But you're talking, like, East Belfast is, there's about BT3, the BT6, so that's 4 postcodes. That's a huge area, and it doesn't have a Gaelic pitch. So we kind of need to get something sorted. We're chatting to the Belfast City Council about it, and they were saying about, you know, you can't have a home. We're not in the business of setting up a home ground, and you're just like, well, if we get at least one GAA pitch in East Belfast, surely it should be open to any GAA club in East Belfast can use it. And they're just like, so if we get that done, it'd be great. But it just takes a time, or it takes a while.
Yes, I'm sure it does. So you have, I presume, a busy enough life, you know, married, or, you know, your job, or all the things that we're all busy doing, and you've taken this on, and it's clearly incredibly time consuming. You obviously feel it's very worthwhile and very important, and will be beneficial to the community as well. Is this increasingly where Belfast and Northern Ireland is, cross community? Look into the future. You know, you've talked about your personal life there. Is that part of the drive here? Because this, to give up this much time and put this much effort in, it can't just be a casual, oh, it'd be nice to play Gaelic football. It would seem to me it's a bit more important than that to you. I
have a good team around me. I couldn't have done this by myself. So literally, I'm just delegating out a lot of stuff. Even just everything. I have fantastic people who got involved here. So just anything coming in is straight away. If I what I'm doing for the club, I am secretary, but literally I get an email, and there's someone I just send that across to that's already put their hand to do that kind of job. The only kind of real job that I have to do is play centre half back. or maybe coach a session if Shay isn't about, and that's really it.
Okay.
And obviously just the odd smart ass comment in the WhatsApp group, and that's my job.
Okay, so it's manageable. It's manageable. 10 years time, I guess you'd like this to be thriving and to be, to have grown from all those principles that you had at the start. I know you don't want to dwell on it, and I understand that. So the events of the past week are more than a minor inconvenience. They make headlines. The PSNI have to get involved. We have Jonathan Roberts saying that these are sectarian hate crimes. He's urging anyone who was training with East Belfast or anyone else who had parked a vehicle at the playing fields or surrounding area to check on and around their vehicle and report anything suspicious immediately to police. That is out there. That's a scary thing for people. That's an off-putting thing for people. Were you anticipating something like that happening, Dave?
We did think it would happen a whole lot sooner. But now that it has happened, I'd say PS and I are dealing with it. We're still doing our cross community thing. We're sport and we're bringing people together, and that's what we're doing, and that's what we'll continue to do. I think the kind of perfection, what makes us so good is that it's just such a simple thing, and that's all we are. It's a sport and bringing people together.
Mm. Did you have to talk to people, calm everyone down? I'm sure there was a lot of concern.
Everyone reacts differently, and I suppose people are new to it. There was a couple of guys meant to be starting for the hurlers on like last Thursday, and they kind of pulled out, and they're not from a GA background, so that's very disappointing. And I completely understand those guys. Not criticizing them at all. Everyone reacts differently, but it's not fair on those guys. And other people that are training with us, the feel that they have to pull out, and it's actually more the people not from a GA background that are more so stepping back, and it's completely wrong that. But we're supporting them. We had like a meeting there last week, and everything's kind of not everything. You're trying to work to getting everyone, making sure everyone's right, fine, and there's other people making sure that everything's managed properly and everyone's okay. But I suppose we could always do more in terms of people's mental health and feeling safe. Our priority is the welfare of our players and members.
Isn't that such a pity that it's the couple of lads who were never previously involved in GA and thought, you know what, in the spirit of getting involved and cross community and trying something new, let's give it a go, that they're almost the ones that felt they had to take a step back when something ridiculous like last week happens? Like that almost would irritate you more, because they've reached out a little bit, they've made themselves a bit vulnerable, and then this kind of nonsense kicks off and they feel they have to step back. That's really terrible to hear.
Yeah, it is. No, it's very disappointing, and it is the principle, but you just, I suppose you just had to crack on. Like, you can't let the wrong people win, and just it'll take time. Everyone reacts differently, so I not at all. I wouldn't criticize anyone, of us guys at all. But we'll see. We've plenty of work to do, and we'll keep cracking on.
And the club played its first hurling game subsequent to all that nonsense last week, did it?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Right.
Not that I knew anything about hurling, but it was pretty good.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear. That's great to hear. So it's fantastic what you're doing. I mean, it's really heartening to see the way it blossomed as well, and people got involved all from one tweet. So we wish you well. Keep up the good work. We might check in 6 months, and hopefully you've a pitch and things are going from strength to strength. So Dave McGreevy, one of the co-founders of East Belfast GAA Club. Dave, thanks a million. Great stuff.
Thanks, Joe.
DeChambeau was coming from, Fina was there, Scheffler held steady. He on 14, slice of luck chipped in, but then especially on 16, Paul, when he was one shot clear, it would have been very understandable if a 23-year-old one shot clear decided not to go for that drivable par 4. Man, he did the opposite.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that difficult, to be honest, Joe.
Okay.
I think everybody in the field would have gone for that. You know, it's not like there was a water hazard there or something that they were trying to avoid or had to carry. You know, it was a little fade around the trees. He hit it beautifully, and he got a good bounce, you know, but you need good breaks to win tournaments. You know, his ball came off the camber on the side of the green and rolled down towards the flag. Moments earlier, we'd seen DeChambeau hit exactly the same shot with a 3-wood that caught the same camber and rolled to the right, and he made a birdie, but wasn't happened to be an eagle. It was a fabulous shot at just the right time. You know, they moved the tee box up by 40 yards yesterday to entice players to go for it. There were 7 eagles on that hole yesterday. It was the easiest hole on the golf course, but still, it had to be done in the heat of competition, and you got to give them a lot of credit for that.
A slight technical point and tangent. Why were a bunch of guys trying to draw that shot at 16 as opposed to hit the fade? It didn't seem to make sense from an eyeline point of view on TV anyway.
Yeah, no sense to me whatsoever, Joe, because the pin was on the right-hand side. The wind was off the left, and the camber on the fairway was left to right. And if you wanted to miss it, you wanted to make sure you missed it on the left, not on the right. So I have no idea why they were doing that, Joe. But again, you know what? A lot of these modern players, they've got a very sterile ball flight now. They don't work the ball left to right, right to left at will. They play one-dimensional, and it's just pretty much a bash straight in the air. And they don't kind of finesse the ball around the golf course. And those players who do that got caught yesterday because that required a left to right shape of shot. And that's why all credit to Morikawa, who's a ball striker very much. Look at his ball striking. His statistics are just phenomenal ball striking. And, you know, he used TaylorMade's equipment. And I was speaking to one of the guys today, the guys who fit him in America, and getting some download on what he does. And they just said it's just absolutely phenomenal how he hits the golf ball and how consistent he is hitting the golf ball. Not one of the power hitters, but at the same time, he hits at a decent distance. But really, his ball control with the irons, particularly the longer irons, is pretty sensational.
Yeah, he's been averaging 296 on the PGA Tour, which is kind of like, you know, not embarrassing. You're getting around. He hit 14 of 16 fairways, and even, you know, I mean, you've obviously been watching the golf closely post lockdown. When he won at Muirfield against Justin Thomas a couple of weeks back, he was ballsy on, I think, the 14th there. There was water down the right. He took the driver out. He went for that. But under pressure on both occasions, this tournament and a couple of weeks ago, that swing doesn't seem to come unstuck under pressure. I mean, he's metronomic.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's not paint too much of a picture of him in that regard. Yes, that was brilliant, and what he did in Muirfield Village was brilliant. But go back to the Charles Schwab 2 weeks earlier, and, you know, when he played a playoff hole and he hit a 6-iron off the tee and hit it 30 yards right into the trees and ended up making bogey and losing that playoff hole. Yeah. You know, nobody's infallible from pressure, and the main thing is to learn from it. He obviously did that from the Charles Schwab as Daniel Berger went on to win that. This guy was on a good run. You know, we look at a lot of the reasons why guys win tournaments, Joe, and, you know, form is certainly one of them. You know, he was coming in here on the back of form, having a good run. The world was looking down very favorably on him. Things were happening for him. He had a win in a tournament. He's having a great run. He's full of excitement coming out on tour. He was playing in California. He's a California boy. Played a lot of golf on this golf course growing up, amateur, knew the golf course very well. Yeah. And, you know, things are lined up for him. So, you know, as great as his performance was, let's not move him into the Tiger Woods category yet. You know, he's got time to evolve into that.
Okay, point taken. And maybe a case in point. One of the most arresting images, total other end of the spectrum from the whole week, was Thursday. And the shots from afar of Jordan Spieth sat on the driving range. I think it must have been Cameron McCormick, his coach, he was chatting to. Is this guy coming back?
Well, I mean, who knows? He certainly seems to have the desire to come back, Joe. All I can say from my experience of being on tour, I've yet to see a player lose his status, lose his game, lose everything he had from underwork. Everybody that I've seen does it from overwork. Paralysis by analysis, as Gary Player says. You become so obsessed. You become so scientific. You treat the game as a science. You lose your natural flair. You lose your ability to play the game and to compete the way you should. And you overthink it. And that's what Jordan is at the moment. He's not the first player to have done that. I've done that myself many times. I don't think there's a player who hasn't done it. And the team around him now is really important, that they draw him away from that precipice of going over that and down that road, because that's not where the answer is. He's never been a technically perfect guy. He's never been a guy who hit the ball a million miles. Don't try to be either of those two things. Be what Jordan Spieth is. Be as good as you were, not just in terms of your iron play and your wedge play, but you were a fabulous putter. You rarely got in your own way. And, you know, that's your DNA, and just get better at your DNA. And yes, you're never going to hit the ball like some of the best players, but that's okay. You've won plenty majors not doing that.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
So I know the likes of Griezmann's big into his fashion.
He wanted a lot. One question he actually asked me was, could he make his studs light up when he runs?
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
Yeah, the Nike Mercurials from 1998. If you just show that boot to an entire generation of people, and they just get instantly nostalgic and remember everything from that era.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past, and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
It's 8:01. You're very welcome to OTB AM this Tuesday morning. Had to think about that one. On, where are we? The 11th of August here. I know a lot of you only listen to the podcast, and by doing that, you actually missed the first half hour of the show, which we broadcast live from 7:30. So you've missed some good stuff. We Dave McGreevy on, who's one of the co-founders of the East Belfast GAA club. It's been a story that has obviously made national headlines over the last week or so, and we kind of got the backstory of it there from him speaking with Joe Malloy last night. And then also we played you a little bit of Paul McGinley. Both of those are available on full individual podcasts on GAA and Highlights. You can subscribe to our GAA, OTB GAA. Just search OTB GAA wherever you get your podcasts, and just search OTB Highlights wherever you get your podcasts. And the best place these days, of course, is the actually OTB Sports app. Search OTB Sports in the App Store and you can subscribe to both of those. A really busy programme for you today. I'll tell you what's coming up in a couple of minutes' time. We've got Andy Mitten, Ken Doherty and Eddie Hearn. But what should I may as well tell you exactly now. Andy Mitten's coming up in about 5 minutes' time. He is in Germany, where Manchester United are currently stationed. And they're obviously bidding for Europa League glory. Sports pages around about 8:35. Took you through the top stories. We've got Deal or No Deal with Phil Egan today, a little bit later on. Perhaps Jadon Sancho gets mentioned, perhaps he does not get mentioned. Who knows? It's been a Jadon Sancho watch, essentially, as the long-running transfer saga has been particularly long-running. That's coming your way at 9:05. Ken Doherty at 9:20 and Eddie Hearn at 9:40. Shane Hannon is with us this morning. That's why we've got Ken Doherty on, but probably because also the World Championships are on, Shane, and they've been pretty interesting so far.
I just love talking about snooker, Jer. So I think any excuse really. And Ken's obviously a great guy and someone who could speak for Ireland. I think the darling of Dublin, but really interesting guy. And the snooker has had some talking points, which usually revolve around Ronnie O'Sullivan, and it's no different this year. So he's made it interesting once again.
Yeah, he, for anybody who missed it, and I don't think many people have missed it at this point, he was lashing the youngsters out of it. I think it's absolutely fair to say. We're going to drop Shane and get back to Shane in just a moment. I'll tell you what's on otbsports.com, and we will shill for our own stuff because it's good stuff for you. So if we can pull up otbsports.com there, I'll tell you what's on it. Our homepage is that piece from last night, obviously, where they were talking about the provenance of the new GAA club in East Belfast. Not a hurling stronghold as yet, but who knows, maybe it will be. People say things like, I'm a Protestant, can I play? And it turns out, yes, you can. Obviously, that was one of the questions being fielded by one of the co-founders. I'm not buying Rory McIlroy is not good enough. It's Paul McGinley. Was pretty straightforward and sharp shooting as usual from the piece last night with Joe, where there's something else going on with Rory, and maybe it is the adrenaline that is missing from the fact that the crowds are there hanging on his oohs and ahs. And then they're shouting, Sexton, Sexton, I've got Sexton. Ireland need more backline moves in rugby. So that's a piece from Monday Night Rugby where Rory O'Connor was on last night. It's going to be very interesting to see if Johnny Sexton is in fact named captain of the Irish team for this period. I guess a lot rides on how well he plays in the upcoming return to play. Stuart Lancaster's in all the newspapers today, and also obviously on otbsports.com because his first press conference of the year, the new season, was yesterday, and he talked at length about a lot of different things, including whether or not he's actually officially been approached to be part of the backroom team just yet for the Lions. He said no, it's been speculation so far, but it looks like that might be trending that direction, which I think would probably be good for everybody. It might mean that he's more likely to stay for another year with Leinster after that. And I think the longer Stuart Lancaster stays at Leinster, the better for everybody. If you want to get in touch this morning, 0879 180 180 is the number to get in touch with us. And I think Shane's back. The Monaghan Gremlins are gone. There you are.
We have Wi-Fi in Monaghan as well. Don't worry. Only arrived this year, but we still have it. But I was just talking about Ronnie O'Sullivan and his desire to make things interesting on the bays again. Is there a little bit,
Ronnie, sometimes that he's protesting a bit too much, and that actually inside him he is, that's his psychological warfare. That's his psyops on the kids to make sure that, because somebody pointed out he was beaten by an amateur last year. It's like, good point. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, James Cahill, the amateur, beat him in the first round of the Crucible last year. Ronnie says he had a cold, so he came up with his excuse. I actually don't think it's mind games on Ronnie's behalf. I think he is genuinely just trying to make interviews and the most mundane parts of his job a little bit more interesting for himself. So, I mean, he ended that BBC interview by saying gracias. He ended another interview with World Snooker 10 minutes later by saying thank you in Chinese. I think he did an interview a few years ago with Neil Foles, the former snooker player, where he spoke like a robot for the entire duration. I think he just does these things to brighten up his day a little bit, and by default it brightens up our day, clearly, because that clip went viral.
He's so bored in the middle of the World Championship that he needs to spice up the post-event interviews. Is that real? Or look, we go broke second guessing Ronnie O'Sullivan's mindset in these things.
Yeah, he pretends like he doesn't care about these tournaments, but he does. I mean, would he love to win a 6th world title and join Steve Davis and Ray Reardon on 6? Stephen Hendry has 7, of course, but of course he would. And if he says he doesn't care, he's not interested in the World Championship or any tournament for that matter, don't believe him, because he actually loves playing the game of snooker. People think he actually hates the sport sometimes, the way he talks about it. He's describing young players. He had, when I interviewed him for the second occasion with himself and Jimmy White in Drogheda a couple of years ago, he had a mug of tea, and the mug said numpties. And I asked him what numpties was, and he said that's what I call the crap players on tour, essentially. So he doesn't have a high opinion of them, which he reiterated the other day. But
hang on,
I think he's...
Hang on. Whoa, hang on. You're burying the lead. He has his own personalised mug that he travels the world with.
I don't know if he travels the world with it. He certainly had it in Drogheda that time.
Well, he didn't, it's his mug, right? It was definitely his mug.
Oh, he owned the mug.
Well, he didn't. He doesn't have a mug in Drogheda. Maybe it's like an old sailor, a woman in every port. Does Ronnie have a numpties mug in every town? I think Ronnie brings a personalised mug. I mean, he's a noted germaphobe, so maybe he has his own knife and fork.
I wouldn't put it past him, but he's that kind of character who just says what he wants, and it appears every year that there's something that comes out that he said this before, but in a more polite way, where he didn't say I have to lose an arm and a leg and to be outside the top 50, or these players are so bad that they wouldn't even be amateurs. I mean, he has said in interviews before, they have to treat their bodies like Formula 1 cars. They have to put in the right foods. They have to spend less time on their iPhones, more time on the practice table, like I did when I was growing up, like John Higgins did, like Ken Doherty did, and concentrate more on the game, which he's right. Some of the players at the lower level aren't good enough, and will never be good enough, but it was a little bit harsh, to say the least. Interested to hear Ken's take.
Yeah, so Ken Doherty going to join us in the next hour. OTBM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It's 9 minutes past 8. Let's go to Andy Mitten, who is in Germany. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I wish that I would have had a little bit more sleep, but I'd agreed to speak to you, and I'm up and I'm ready to speak to you.
Well, thanks very much.
And all's good.
So a late night then, Andy? Was that the...
Yeah, it was a late night. Not that I was out indulging. The game kicked off at 9 p.m. local time. There was extra time on top of that. So it was well after midnight by the time I left the stadium in Cologne. It took me 40 minutes to get a tram back into Cologne, and then another hour on to Dusseldorf, which is fine. But I woke up at 5 o'clock yesterday morning and I'd not slept so well the night before. And I'm not 21 anymore, but I'm okay. I'm pleased that Manchester United are through to the semi-finals of the Europa League. It was a hard slog against Copenhagen. They were pretty much exactly how their manager, Ståle Stolbakken, said they would be. I spoke to him for 45 minutes on Friday. He's a very interesting man. He managed briefly in Wolves and in Cologne, but he's been in charge of Copenhagen for 14 years, and his team are very well organised. They don't concede many goals at all. It was their 17th European game of the season, and they knocked Celtic out, among other clubs, and they were very difficult to break down. It wasn't a vintage Manchester United performance, especially at the start, but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's team did improve against his compatriot side. And Bruno Fernandes, again, he scored. It was United's 21st penalty of the season. And it's enough to put United through to a tie on Sunday, again in Cologne. So I'll be repeating that trip again and again and again. And that will be against either Wolves, who Manchester United keep drawing. I think that'll be the 6th game this season, if it's Wolves. But Wolves have got to overcome Sevilla. Sevilla are the 4th best team in Spain, really strong in this competition. They've got a better record in the Europa League than any other team. So I quite enjoy this competition. I think it's one that Manchester United should be winning, or intending to win, but it's going to be difficult. And if it is to be Sevilla, United should be vengeful there, because Sevilla knocked the team out of the 2008 Champions League, which was one of the reasons why Jose Mourinho's stock really began to slip at Old Trafford.
A couple of things. The difficulties around travel that you're experiencing and all that kind of stuff, and the weirdness of the whole scenario. Here we are in high summer in Germany and the temperatures are high. It's just, there's just an oddness to everything, notwithstanding the fact that the games are behind closed doors. Is that having any impact on the quality of the football that we're seeing, do you think?
I don't think it helps. The temperature last night was 31 and it was very humid. So I was seeing people complain about the performance on social media during the game. And I was thinking, well, I'm hearing it's pretty uncomfortable in the stands, so it's not going to be any better on the pitch. I've been in that stadium one time before when Cologne beat Arsenal in 2017, and it was rocking. German stadiums are very atmospheric. They've all been built closer to the pitches after the 2006 World Cup, because before that, a lot of the German stadiums had been built in the 70s for the 74 World Cup, and they had running tracks. Now they've got standing terraces, and it's a joy to watch football in them when there's fans. When there's no fans, it's completely odd. And I spoke to Manchester United and FC Copenhagen fans in Cologne, down by the Rhine, before the game. They travelled over. Of course, there's a social aspect to it. They're having a few drinks with their friends, and they knew they were not going to get into the game. And that just fills me with sadness when I meet people like that, because I know who they are. I've seen them go into games for decades. They're hardcore supporters. And they have a song at United, if the Reds should play in Rome or Mandalay, we'll be there. And they were there. And they were having a good time, there's no doubt about it. But it's still really sad, and I'd like fans to be back. I think everybody would, as soon as possible. And I was speaking to a director of a Bundesliga club before the game, someone who I know from this part of the world, and he was saying, we're trying to get fans in October, but it's frustrating, and it will be the politicians that decide the numbers, and we need 15,000 to get through into our club, and it's not looking like we're going to be allowed to get that number through. So it's a longer slog than we first thought in terms of getting fans back. I thought this would be a 2-month blip, and it doesn't look like being that. But United will carry on playing, and if United can win the Europa League, I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer can say, this has been a successful season. We've finished third, and I've won a competition, and I've reached another 2 domestic semi-finals as well. I'm not saying it's the treble season, but it's progress.
The performance actually wasn't that bad. It's just that they came up against an inspired goalkeeping performance. I think I saw a stat before the end of normal time that this is the second time this year that they've had 18 shots and not actually managed to score. Was Burnley the last time? Was that? Am I right about that? But whatever it was like an outrageously imbalanced performance in terms of shots, and at some point this team is good enough that they will score goals from that.
Yeah, I thought that Copenhagen actually had the better chances early on, and a better team would have punished Manchester United. And you considered the difference between playing against Bayern Munich or FC Copenhagen. But as I said right at the start, Copenhagen are impressive. Their results are impressive. They're not playing in one of the top 5 leagues. And Solbakken explained to me in great detail on Friday their aims each year are to reach the group stage of the Europa League, and they've now gone past that, to win the Danish league. They have been doing that. They didn't do it this year. And to identify, develop and sell players to teams in richer leagues. And it's a very successful business model, which they're doing with someone who's pretty much like the Sir Alex Ferguson of Scandinavia. They play a zonal defensive system, and it was effective. There were not spaces in it, even for United's rapid attackers. And it was difficult out there. But United did get stronger, as you say. Especially towards the end. Bruno Fernandes was having a lot of chances. I thought Juan Mata was a very good substitution when he came on. And they were also looking a bit leggy. And part of me can't work that out because there's been this big break for the lockdown, and yet players like Fernandes are looking a lot more tired in recent weeks. I suppose it's down to the sheer number of matches, and there's going to be 2 more matches this week, and maybe 2, maybe 1, and they're going to be difficult. But I'm watching United at the moment and I'm thinking there's room for encouragement here, there's room for optimism here, but you can also see why the club are trying to get Jadon Sancho to take United towards the level that they should be at, because it's one thing struggling to overcome a stubborn Copenhagen team. If United are really going to be where they need to be, they're going to be after doing that against teams like Bayern Munich and PSG.
What else are they missing, Andy, apart from Jadon Sancho? Because they obviously created loads of chances last night, so it's not just Sancho's not going to be. As a Man United fan, you hope that he has the same impact as the last big signing they had. But what else? What else in terms of first teamers do you think they could spend money on, and somebody would improve the team straight away?
I think there'll be improvement without buying anyone. Although Ole Gunnar told me he wants 2 or 3 players to compete for the title. So if you look at the fullbacks, for example, I think defensively they're pretty fine, but going forward, there's not enough crosses, there's not enough assists. But Brandon Williams is only 18 years old. Mason Greenwood on the right, he's 18 as well. With age comes consistency, but you can't just switch it on and expect a teenager to be performing every week, which is why A, Mata came on, and B, why United are interested in Sancho. Maybe in central midfield, I was a little bit surprised that Matic didn't start. Pogba improved in the second half, but looked a little bit off it. They all did at the start of the game. And the defence has been good this year. Statistically, it's been good. I think the number of goals being conceded in the league, it's in the same league as Manchester City and Liverpool, who are miles ahead in terms of points. But I don't think anybody looks at central defence and says this is Nemanja Vidic and Rio Ferdinand or Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister all over again. So I think there's room for improvement. The goalkeeper, David De Gea, has not had a good season. You can't pretend otherwise, but just more consistency. But that has come since January, since that Burnley game that you spoke about. But if you look at the points average since then, it's still not quite good enough for a team that's going to be winning the league in a normal season. It's still a team that's second or third. So more options for Solskjaer. Some of those players looked dead on the feet last night. And he has scouted and identified and bought well, but he needs more from the players as well. Dan James started well, but faded throughout the season. Cut him a bit of slack because it was his first season. Wan-Bissaka's been good defensively, but he's young. The team's young. It's the youngest team in the Premier League. So I think United will benefit from more games together, more confidence together. Keeping Pogba, because everyone thought he was going to go. Fernandes has been an excellent signing, and start afresh next season and start a lot better than they did last season.
Do you think De Gea will be there next season?
Yeah, I do. I'm not going to go to court and prove that, but I do. I can't see how anyone can afford his wages, especially when he's been less than convincing this season. And I know very well what his stock is in Spain, and it's nothing like it was in 2015 when he was about to go to Real Madrid. He hasn't performed well for the Spanish national team, but he needs to cut back on the mistakes. What I don't know is what Dean Henderson's role is going to be, because he's had an excellent season at Sheffield United. Or Sergio Romero. He's been very good in the Europa League, and it wasn't his busiest night against FC Copenhagen, but it was another clean sheet for him, and I don't think anybody would be too worried if he starts in the semi-final on Sunday. And as Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said, the goalkeeping situation is not one that troubles him too much in terms of the goalkeepers he's got to choose from, but De Gea has got to cut out those high-profile mistakes, which have been magnified. It's always going to happen at Manchester United and have cost the team this season.
Andy, can I just ask about, you mentioned Juan Mata there, and obviously he came off the bench last night, was lively. I think someone had mentioned that he had something like 19 Premier League appearances this year. He didn't score. 32 now, so kind of getting on a bit. And obviously if United bring in new talent, that's going to squeeze his position out of the team even further. But ESPN had stats as well last week saying he was the highest paid sub in the Premier League. So I think Mesut Ozil was only 5th on the list. But what's his role in the United team should they strengthen?
Well, I don't think them stats are entirely fair towards Juan Mata, because he only started 8 Premier League games. Nobody started more games in the Europa League than Juan Mata. And you might say that the Europa League is where his level is for United this season. When he signed last June, I can remember tweeting that I thought it was a good thing that he'd signed, because I knew that there was going to be players leaving the club, and he's a really good person. I think everybody knows that. Not that you necessarily just want someone in the dressing room because he's a really good person, but he definitely does help, and he does have his moments and he does have his uses, and he proved that last night. It was a very effective substitution, and when he started games, I remember Southampton in August. He was the best player in the first half. He was finding those pockets of spaces. He was driving forward. But he's not going to be as influential as Bruno Fernandes could be. It was a great substitution in Cologne when he came on, and I'm really pleased for him. And he does earn a lot of money, but I still think on balance it was the right thing to keep him. I think he started 21 games overall. And as long as he's supplying the players to score the goals, the younger lads around him. But I'm not going to be kidding and say this is Manchester United's future. I think the reasons for keeping him, and I was a little bit surprised that he stayed, because I didn't know whether he wanted to be playing week in, week out, but he's got a good connection at the club, and maybe there weren't enough people like Mata or of Mata standing in the dressing room this season. So I'm glad that he stayed. But you can hear buts in my voice.
Yeah.
This isn't Manchester United's future, no way about it. But I've got a little bit of sympathy with Juan as well, because he's played at the club at the wrong time. If he would have come in a decade earlier, he would have won trophies. And David De Gea always says to him, "You should have seen what this city was like when we won the league in 2013." And that was always been Juan Mata's motivation to win the league. And it's probably not going to happen for him, which is a shame. But he's a great human. He really is. And football, it's a great sport, but it's not always a great industry. And truly, and I know him, I think he's a great human being.
You get the impression that people like him around the club are hugely important for the culture that Solskjaer is trying to... And we talk about culture all the time. And ultimately, if a team is winning, a load of the stuff that counts as culture ends up being just looked after, because competition happens on the pitch. Naturally, everybody wants to be part of the winning team. But when a team isn't winning, like it wasn't all the time when Solskjaer took over and had his sticky patch, that's when it really requires people in the dressing room to be calm and have some experience, to be good people, and to kind of just bring everybody in line. And if you don't have people who are doing that, like we've just been talking about, then maybe you're in trouble. And I guess that's the other thing that has to happen this summer as well. There's been a slow, steady clearing out of players just to make sure that you weren't going to be any bad influence or part of the first team, or your mistakes weren't going to be tolerated anymore. Is there a fringe of those players who we could expect to see moved on quietly this summer?
Yes, although is it ever quiet with Manchester United? Your first point is absolutely right. The start of this season was dreadful. It was nowhere near good enough. There cannot be a repeat of that. I'm sick of hearing myself saying it, but 4 wins in the first 14 league games up to the start of December was woeful. And I put that to the manager, and he admits that, and he wouldn't get away with that next season. It has to be much, much better. And you can talk about fine lines, you can talk about what you want. People will still judge you by results. I think Solskjaer will continue his process and moving on the players, some of them who earn, I was going to say extortionate, and I suppose it is to normal people, amounts of money for not contributing so much to United. But he's actually done it quite effectively. If you look at the players he didn't want, he moved them on. United got very good money for Romelu Lukaku. They've moved Alexis Sanchez on, and that was a disastrous signing, but he has gone. His money is now off the wage bill, and I think there's other players there. We know who they are. The team selections have been clear. If someone comes in for Marcus Rojo, who's on loan, or Phil Jones, or Jesse Lingard, then I think United would listen to offers. The problem is these people earn too much money. And because they've not been doing brilliantly well, that creates a lack of demand for them. But I still think Jesse Lingard is a Premier League player. I think he's not actually done badly when he's come on as substitute in the last couple of weeks either. But again, he's not another one who's Manchester United's future. I'd be stunned if he was. And United have been pretty strict in the contract negotiations as well, because there was a situation a year ago where there's the second highest wage bill in world football, and United were nowhere near the second best team in world football. They were overpaying, and agents knew that. So they let players go like Ander Herrera, who they felt were being totally unrealistic in their demands for what they wanted to stay at the club. And of course they're going to pay well. If Jadon Sancho comes in, of course he's going to be played incredibly well. But what you're not going to see is this shattering of the wage structure, which caused so many problems with Alexis Sanchez, because players were looking at him and thinking, he earns 2, 3, 4, 5 times what I'm earning, and he's not even playing. And some can turn a blind eye to it, but for others it just causes an issue in the dressing room. And Solskjaer wants a good team spirit, and he's adamant that he's getting that. And I think results are showing that there has been an improvement as well.
That's the long term. That's the original sin of the last half decade, is paying Alexis Sanchez that money, because it doesn't just impact the top, it impacts the bottom players. So everybody who suddenly is now getting their first contract, or their second contract, more importantly, the one where they've proven that they're actually capable of being a bit part player, are suddenly getting 20 to 40 grand a week more than they would be at any of the other Premier League teams, because the top guy's getting paid the most. And the agent walks in and has got a very easy job in saying, that's what you're paying Alexis Sanchez. That's what it says in the paper, and we know it's true. So you've got to give my guy at least 1/5 of that. And it's like, oh no, what have we done? And it's weird that it's fallen to Solskjaer to fix this, because actually it's Woodward's fault, and it's that side of the business's responsibility to fix it. While Solskjaer has had this weird playing squad that, you know, he has to come in and put some discipline on, and at the same time deal with what's going on with Pogba and the crisis of confidence that his goalkeeper has. When you take all that together, I think it's fair to say that he's done a very good job to make the comeback that he's made from 4 wins in the opening 14 games. Which does bring me nicely around to Woodward and the suggestion that the Sancho deal is now in a negotiation phase, where ultimately I think this is one of those deals where they want the player, he's the right age profile, he's definitely got the quality that they need. There can't be that much in terms of difference between the fee. Like, this is one of those deals where I would actually say pay the money, get him in, sort it out now, as opposed to paying Alexis Sanchez whatever he wants because he's free.
Yeah, you might say that, but it's not your money. And Dortmund want 120 million euros. And this isn't off the back of a good exchange rate either against the pound. I absolutely agree that Sancho is a top class player. What am I basing that on? Because I'm not watching it every week. Well, I spoke to somebody who's won the Bundesliga the other day, and who knows far more about Sancho than I does. And I just asked him to run through 3 or 4 players, and Sancho just came out in great detail on top of them. Although he did say he felt he was better last season than this season. I think there hasn't been an agreement yet. The transfer talk gets crazy. I sense that some Manchester United fans are more into transfers and the signing of players than the actual games themselves. I even think that you could actually get rid of the games and just sign players, and that's your story. That's where your interest comes from, and it gets more ridiculous every year. I think United just took the sting out of the tail last week when they said, look, we haven't got an agreement. We haven't agreed personal terms with him. Clearly he's the number one target. I do think that he wants to join Manchester United. He wants to come back to England. But Dortmund are not under huge pressure to sell either. But United feel that football's economics have changed with Corona. The market's certainly not more inflated than it was, and feel that Dortmund may be still thinking it's 2017, 18, 19 when they got such huge amounts for Ousmane Dembele to Barcelona, who's been pretty mixed actually. And I think it's just a negotiation process, and when Dortmund say our deadline is the 10th of August, that's arbitrary. That's not the transfer deadline. The transfer deadline is in October. I really hope this doesn't go on until October.
It'll kill us. It will kill us if it does.
Mate, you've not got people coming up to your mum saying in the street when she's doing a shopping, saying, no, what's going on with Sancho? Can you ask your Andy? Can you ring your Andy now and find out what's going on with Sancho? And you end up stepping back from it because it just gets crazy. It gets absolutely crazy. And as I said, some people are totally obsessed by these transfers. And when and if, and I think he probably will, sign, they just move on to the next target straight away. It's like in pursuit of the next one. And these people get like one game before they're being judged. No, I knew we shouldn't have got him. And a lot of them are young supporters, and they're very excited at the prospect of someone like Sancho coming in. And I totally get that. And he is needed, and he is versatile, and he is fast, and he's tricky to watch, and he's hugely skillful. And I think he could be a world-class player. I think he's potentially that good. But there's another factor in here, because there's been quite a lot of criticism in Germany against Bayern Munich's dominance, and Bayern Munich have started to hit back from that, saying, we actually want competition. Who are our biggest rivals? Borussia Dortmund. They're a selling club. We want them to be stronger. They're a selling club. I mean, Dortmund don't really need to sell. They've got enough money now. They don't need to sell. They're becoming like a Premier League club. And I think that they've been stung a little bit by Uli Hoeneß's comments from Bayern Munich, saying, you can't be a true competitor to us when you're selling your best players all the time. Because if Dortmund had kept Dembele and do keep Sancho and had kept Lewandowski, and there's loads more, Dortmund have sold so many great players, they would have won the league. Bayern wouldn't have won it 8 seasons in succession. So Dortmund are not where they were in 2005, where they were about to go under. They needed to raise capital through shares. They were haggling over a couple of 100,000 when they took Steven Pienaar from Ajax. They're much stronger now. But please just get it sorted out one way or another. But I do see where United are coming from by not saying we're paying 120, because we've had our pants pulled down too many times recently because people know that we've got money. And United are not any richer because of Corona. United were burning through £25 million per month during the lockdown, and they're in a much stronger position than most clubs. But the finances have changed. They definitely have.
So you think it will get done, but it actually could be another month, another 2 months?
I don't know. I wish I did know. I know that there's not been an agreement so far. And when I've seen stories last week about personal terms have been agreed, as a journalist, I tried to find out the answer to that question, and I just got back, no, they haven't. They haven't. So what was happening was Dortmund were using the German media to play their little transfer game. So I know United have got other options. They'll all be complicated as well. because the type of players they want, well, the clubs aren't really under any pressure to sell them. But I think the fundamentals are United do want him. Dortmund know they're going to have to sell him, if not this season, then next season. And they know that when they buy British players, and I know this because I know people who've dealt with them very, very closely, they're going to go back to playing in the Premier League, which is a far wealthier league. And really help how they do it. They pay good money for very young players. They give them a platform in front of 80,000, the highest average crowd in world football, and then they sell them on for a huge profit. I can't see why Sancho is going to be any different to that.
Andy, can I just ask you about the match day experience? You mentioned that you'd been to Cologne before with fans, experienced it last night, of course, without fans, and hopefully we have fans back at matches sometime in the near future. But there was a piece I was reading in your summer edition of United We Stand. I think it was Ian Sterling from the United Supporters Trust talking about this safe standing, and it's been a long-standing, forgive the pun, effort to get safe standing at Old Trafford. And he kind of gave a nice history of Hillsborough and the Taylor Report and the petitions that have been going around all these years to try and get safe standing back in the Premier League. And when you see games in Germany, they do match day experiences, right? But for people who might not be fully up to date on that and the effort to get safe standing at Old Trafford, where is that currently at? Because, of course, there has been issues over maybe match day atmosphere at Old Trafford for quite some time.
There will be trials, and I think it's great that we're going to see standing back at Old Trafford. And cheers for buying the summer issue. We appreciate it. And Ian Sterling has been at the heart of negotiations to help bring this trial to Old Trafford. And we've got a lot of readers in Ireland. It's a shame that Easons are not going to stock United We Stand anymore, because they've changed the terms and we just can't afford what they're asking for now because we're a small publisher. But we get loads of support from Ireland so that we can do in-depth pieces like this, because the match day culture is really important to our readers. Most of them are match-going United fans, so that puts them in a minority straight away. And Germany have done a lot of things right. Cheap admission prices, terracing, and for a decade I've been writing about how good the German fan culture is. And in 2017, FC Cologne played their first European game for 22 years at Arsenal. And 20,000 of them came to London, and 2,000 of them had tickets. And the English press were pretty quick to write them off as being hooligans, and they were not. I was in the middle of them. I know fan culture. I write about it. I travel around the world going to derbies. And I wrote a very complimentary article about FC Cologne fans, which got me offers of marriage from Cologne and Lucas Podolski writing to me. And I became... I got to know Podolski. I went to see him. I'm going to see him this week. I went to see him in Japan. And it's like, you are the only person who understood our fan culture. And I took that as a great compliment, because I've been writing about fan culture since I've been 15. And it does matter. It's not just noise, background noise that you see on television. Football isn't just a sport that you watch through a screen. And live sport, and it doesn't just have to be football. It can be hurling, it can be rugby, is incredible. And it's really important that sport plays a part in the community, big or small communities. And Manchester United are from Manchester. And for decades and over 100 years, people have gone to watch their local football club. And United now have gone way beyond that, and that's brilliant. And some of United's biggest fans are from nowhere near Manchester. I know people who are season ticket holders who come over from Ireland every game. I'm not going to embarrass them by naming them, but that's how well I know these people. You see them at games in Austria behind closed doors. People like Finno, who played top division football actually for Bray. He played in the final in 1990, I think, at Lansdowne Road, and he's a diehard Manchester United fan. I've got great respect for these people, but for too long, fans were being charged too much for tickets. I'm pleased that ticket prices have barely risen in a decade at Old Trafford, and the atmosphere suffered massively. And we documented it really well, because at Old Trafford, it declined year after year from the late 80s, and seats didn't help, ticket prices didn't help. And the bus I used to get from Urmston, quite close to Old Trafford, was packed when I was a teenager, and it's empty now. It's really sad that. that people on the doorstep felt that they couldn't no longer go to Old Trafford. And the demographic of the match-going fan became an ageing one. And there were so many frustrations there. And for decades, the club just shrugged it off. And I've since apologised. People like Martin Edwards have said to me, and he was the chairman, I got it wrong. I got it wrong putting an area of executive seating in the middle of the Stretford end. But now the club are listening to fans. The Red Army is a section in the Stretford end, vocal. That's boosted the atmosphere. The standing trial, I think, is a good thing. So finally, fans are being listened to. Germany have got a successful model for what the atmosphere should be like inside football stadiums. And these are encouraging.
John Finnegan played left wing in the 1990 FAI Cup final. Is that who you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
There you go. You've just added him properly as a season ticket holder there. And they beat St Francis that day. That was a plucky non-league team that they beat in the FAI Cup final. Couldn't happen anymore, Andy. It's exactly the type of fan culture that we're talking about. Great to have you with us. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your time in Germany.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
Always great to have Andy Mitten from United We Stand there. And I'm sure there are plenty of news agents around the world or around the country who might be interested in stepping in for Easons to stock United We Stand. What are we at? 8:41 this morning on OTBM. We're going to be back with the sports pages and top stories this morning next. First, though, here's Paul McGinley talking about Rory McIlroy's form.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not buying he's not good enough. He is fabulously good enough. The previous up to the lockdown, he played the best golf of his life, Joe. Statistics will illustrate that. His wins will illustrate that. His performances of top fives and top tens will illustrate that. That's not that long ago. That was back to the end, March, up to March. He's lost his confidence. He's lost his intensity. I've been saying that for a while. He's not the same guy at the moment. And you know what? Sometimes that happens. You've got to ride through it, not overthink it, and understand it and give the reasons to yourself, honestly, as to why you've lost your intensity. Is it the crowds and, is it something off the course? We don't know. I mean, he hasn't said anything. We don't know about that. But certainly he's not the player he was before. And he's making a lot of mistakes. He had 13 bogeys and a triple bogey last week. When you look at the leaders are only making 3 and 4 bogeys. You're not going to win major championships with that. And that looks like a guy who's making too many mistakes. The concentration levels are not there. The intensity levels, like I've been saying for the last 2 or 3 months, are not there. I don't see it's a really technical problem. And we've seen this a lot from Rory. He goes into a slumber and then he'll come out of it again and he'll take off. So, as fans of Rory and fellow countrymen of Rory, we've just got to sit back, and it's part of the DNA of who he is, and he'll come out of this. He's just gone into that kind of a slumber of mediocre performances and he's down on himself and he doesn't have the energy levels that he would normally have, and all of a sudden then something will ignite him and he'll be up and running again. So I wouldn't be overly concerned, and I certainly don't think that he's not as good as he used to be. Yes, there are some guys coming onto the pitch that weren't on there before, and they are full of that desire and intensity, but Rory's got a game every bit, if not better than all of those.
Yeah.
OTB AM.
So at 8:43, let's take you through the sports pages. We're going to start with otbsports.com, as we do every day. We recommend you get your sports news from otbsports.com. And that's our feature interview last night with one of the co-founders of the East Belfast GAA club. People say things like, I'm a Protestant, can I play? And it turns out yes is the answer. Then as well, I'm not buying Rory McIlroy is not good enough. That's the clip we just played you from Paul McGinley making news last night, and loads of rugby as well, in terms of what needs to happen with the future of Ireland's backline moves, from Rory O'Connor last night, speaking to Joe on Monday Night Rugby. I run through the sports pages very quickly. Obviously, Manchester United's late victory in extra time against Copenhagen last night is in all of the papers, and the return to club action, GAA activity in Kildare, Laois and Offaly moves back a phase. As per the government guidelines, you are allowed to have non-contact training sessions of no more than 15 players outdoors, and that's what the GAA's National COVID Advisory Committee have recommended for the clubs in those counties. But also a story here from John Fogarty. GPA split season plan has Croker support. So it's interesting that the GPA plan was made public last Friday, but it does already have something from Croke Park in terms of support. Micheál Martin, the Wexford Vice Chairman, not the Taoiseach, is a member of the National Fixtures Committee. Nothing's off the table, he says. We're in changed times. Everything will be considered. I would imagine that will be the view of the whole group. We're being reconvened to review the previous proposals and to examine any other proposals we may have. Despite what was put in the public by the CPA, the group were very much of the opinion that change was required and there was an openness to change before COVID-19, and I imagine it hasn't done anything to change that appreciation. It may even have brought a greater appreciation to that. So I think support is rallying behind the GPA's plan for a radically shortened inter-county season. Sancho going nowhere, says Dortmund. We've been talking about that a little bit earlier on with Andy Mitten. Irish Open's moved north to draw US-based golfers. This is a story from Brian Keogh, and I haven't seen this anywhere else as well. The Dubai duty-free Irish Open looks set to be held in Northern Ireland the week after the US Open, from September the 24th to the 27th. Obviously, it was supposed to be in Mount Juliet this year in May from the 28th to the 31st, and I think Mount Juliet still has the signs up. So I think Mount Juliet's probably going to get it next year as part of this, but it now appears likely to be played at Galgorm Castle Spa and Golf Resort near Ballymena. So I think they did want it to either go to back to Mount Juliet or perhaps to the Old Head. The COVID-19 restrictions have forced the European Tour to look north, according to multiple sources. So that looks like it's going to be the week after the US Open from September 24th to 27th. The Irish Times, obviously, again, I think it's the same picture of the penalty being scored last night. United Seal semi-final spot as Fernandez sinks Copenhagen, and they've got a preview of the game tonight between Wolves and Sevilla in Duisburg. And they're also looking back at Lukaku firing Inter Milan through. So we're still on track for an Inter Milan Manchester United final, and there is a picture of Stuart Lancaster, who was doing press yesterday. Gavin Cumsky reading the runes, saying that he does hope to be part of the Lions coaching ticket. He said it would be a huge honour to be. He has not been approached for it yet. Fans must return or clubs will go bust, says the chairman of Exeter in the UK. I'll get to that in a moment as well. The Star of the back page, United made to sweat. We have real incentive, so that's Vinnie Perth. A home draw in the Champions League second qualifying round presents a massive incentive to navigate next week's opening tie at NK Celje. That's in Újpest in Hungary, and that's the venue for the meeting with the Slovenian champions tomorrow week. So we're going to see a lot of very hopeful stuff, because then it'll be Molde probably in the next round after that, and that'll be in the Aviva for Dundalk if they can manage to make it through that. And Vinnie Perth is making the point that he gets judged on Champions League results as well. So that's the story there. We're losing $1 million a month. Exeter Chiefs, just like RTE, losing $1 million a month, it turns out. Exeter Chiefs chairman fears clubs will go bust by Christmas. Closed stadiums are biggest threat as vital revenues drive up. Rough ride for Ole. This is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Dortmund hit brakes, but Sancho chase is on. It's him arriving to work on a bike, and Fernandez says United blushes in extra time. I think that, look, how you win the competition is irrelevant, just winning the competition. Here we go. It's a picture of Bruno with his ears covered. That's why they're gone with here we go there. Lockdown ease for GAA clubs. That's their back allowed to play. Bruno is Red Star, is that one there. And pictures of Mason Greenwood feeling the heat. Sluggish United forced into Europa League extra time, so the early edition of The Guardian didn't have the full-time result for that one as well. Dortmund playing hardball, and that's that picture of Bruno on the back of that one as well. The Irish Daily Mail has Blues boss backs Schmidt for big comeback. So this is Stuart Lancaster reckons that it's Joe Schmidt was linked with a job at World Rugby at the weekend in the Sunday Times, and Stuart Lancaster was backing him to get back into rugby sooner rather than later. And an amazing story in the front of the Racing Post. The questions Phoenix Thoroughbreds will not answer. Last November, the Racing Post reported that Amer Abdulaziz, the founder of the big spending global racing operation Phoenix Thoroughbreds, had been named as an alleged money launderer for the fake cryptocurrency OneCoin in a US courtroom. If you want to read any more on that, you can get it in the Racing Post today. And all about the ARC, Gosden explains why Enable will bypass York. So, Shane, where are we going?
Here we go, I think, is the tab of the morning, Ger. I think that's Bruno Fernandes. I think he was speaking last week about he was giving out to the TV corporations for not catching his celebration. It's a message to his daughter, apparently. So every time he scores a goal, he cups his ears. But apparently it was cutting off his celebration early. So his daughter said, "You didn't do it, Dad," but he did it, and it's all over the back pages. So at least she's happy.
I think "Here We Go" is a bit lazy, I've got to say. I think boring, touching ears and it's "Here we go." I'm like, come on, lads, come on. You're phoning it in. Every morning the country needs a little smile, a little bit of joy, a little bit of serotonin. And it's like, here we go. Oh, come on. Come on.
Yeah, C- could be better, I think.
His daughter could have done better than that, I think.
I think we should start with the GPA, Jared, that John Fogarty story you mentioned in the Irish Examiner. So it's good to see that there potentially is a bit of agreement on the horizon. I think John was writing as well at the weekend in the Examiner about how this forced change into the GAA season is probably going to create the environment for meaningful change as well. So because the GAA calendar has been forcefully amended, we possibly have started a conversation for the better in terms of GAA players and player welfare, most importantly. But we had that GPA release last week, so Paul Flynn outlining their plan for the GPA calendar. So from the start of February to the end of July, a season. This would incorporate a pre-season, so you're slicing the calendar essentially by as much as 17 weeks. So the GPA agree on this, the CPA agree on this, and as per John Fogarty's piece in the Examiner today, it appears that the GAA may potentially agree on this, because the man you mentioned, the Wexford Vice Chairman, Micheál Martin, again, not the Taoiseach, he previously acted as a National Fixtures Committee Chairman, so that's why he's important. He's a member of that Fixtures Committee task force as well. So he's saying these GPA proposals will be given due consideration, which is positive, because the GAA are the key cog in this. Obviously, we need their agreement, the GPA need their agreement, the CPA need their agreement for this to actually happen. August 19th, so tomorrow week, is the big date. That's the day that the GPA will present this plan to the GAA's National Fixtures Review Task Force. So I guess we wait with bated breath to see what will happen. But I mean, Micheál Martin's comments, the Wexford Chairman, Vice Chairman, in the paper today, in John Fogarty's piece, would point to at least serious consideration of the GPA's proposals. So this GPA plan, in a nutshell, a pre-season inter-county schedule of 23 weeks. So currently the season obviously runs to twice that length. So that would leave the period from July to August to July or August to December to hold club activity, which gives them plenty of time to complete club championships.
Yeah, I think.
So
I think the August bank holiday weekend is kind of the cut-off point. Like they said, the end of July. But if you think about it, like a Saturday evening All Ireland final hurling and a Sunday afternoon All Ireland football final, that's not a bad weekend. Maybe you spread that over the course of the week, because the hurling ends up getting swamped in terms of the football coverage. I don't know, but that's a perfect endpoint to a season.
It's better for player welfare as well. I mean, they get a bit of time off. If you're off at the end of July, August, you probably get the chance to go off to New York and do your Boston, Diarmuid Connolly type escapades. But when travel resumes, so it's an interesting one. It would be a cruel blow if this conversation next Wednesday between the GPA and the GAA didn't go anywhere. Clearly, there's an appetite for change.
This is the Fixtures Review Committee meeting next. So
yeah,
like they're just bringing.
This is the 11 person.
Yeah, and they're one vote on that, or they're one voice on that. Obviously, everybody else, it's supposed to be coming with proposals. They're supposed to be coming with ideas. Now, this is the Fixtures Review Committee, which has already put forward 3 separate ideas. One is retain the status quo. One is split the country into 4/8, which makes a lot of sense, but obviously completely screws New York, and we're just about to have a New York president, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And then the final one was to flip the interprovincial to early season and flip the league to the summer, and that would actually ultimately be what decides where Sam Maguire goes. Now, apparently there isn't that much appetite for that. That was all pre-COVID. That was all in the alternative universe that existed before a pandemic hit, and before we kind of had a look at some alternative arrangements and what life might look like if there was a separate inter-county and a separate club season. And to be honest, what this proposal that the GPA put forward, it doesn't actually suggest, it's agnostic on the idea of what those competitions should be. It's just saying, here's your window to run inter-county competitions, have at it, lads.
Yeah, there's no digging down. Perhaps they're waiting on whether or not they see people amenable to their ideas, that they go into more detail. But the one positive I'm seeing from the GPA, from my perspective, is sustainable amateurism. Paul Flynn is at least coming up with ideas. We had the ESRI reports, I think, last year, where the quality of life and the amount of hours spent commuting and spent getting to training was a worry for a lot of people and a lot of inter-county players. So to hear Paul Flynn talk about things like sustainable amateurism, I think he was on with yourself and Owen a couple of weeks ago, where he spoke about competitive balance as well and learnings from the Aussie rules. So they might be buzzwords, but hopefully they lead to a better future for the GAA, and most importantly, a better calendar, because as you said, the ideas are a little bit fickle at the moment, but hopefully they take a bit of shape over the next while.
Yeah, look, I think this is a quantum leap forward in terms of the conversation that's being had. And now there is a concrete proposal. Everybody's always asking the GPA to be the body that comes forward and fixes everything, when actually, ultimately, it is Croke Park and the GAA Politburo and Congress whose job it is to fix everything, because they're the ones that set the policies. The players want to play and the players want to win, because that's that short period of their career where they're as good as they can possibly be. And so somebody needs to say, well, this is where you're going to play, and this is when you're going to play, and these are the competitions you're going to play in. The players can't fix everything, but at least now they've answered that old hoary chestnut about, oh, well, they never come forward with any ideas. Here's the ideas. Let's have at it. Let's have the debate, and let's hear from people who think this is a bad idea and that we should retain the bit where it's like 40 weeks of the year, because nobody thinks that anymore. I think that kind of, the tide has gone out on that one. So here's a concrete proposal and an opportunity to make the change almost immediately if we wanted it. They could still have the special Congress virtually this December, when everybody has kind of come through this process and gone, okay, well, what's next? And I think there's a definite window of opportunity here, and the GPA are flying through it, so I think fair play to them. 0879 180 180. Give us your thoughts on that, or use the hashtag OTBAM. It's 8:55 this morning here on OTBAM. Where are we going next, Shane?
Yeah, we'll stick with the GAA, but GAA SmackTalk, Ger, is something I think that everyone will agree we need more of. SmackTalk obviously works, especially if you do it beforehand. If you tell someone you're going to win something and then go on to win it, you look better. I should know, because the duathlon that we recently took part in, I clearly engaged in a small amount of SmackTalk, but followed it through with the performance at the end of the day, and beat our esteemed producer Tommy Rooney to the title. SmackTalk is important. We don't see enough of it in the GAA. We see a lot of platitudes. We see the usual Asher Lookets in pre and post match interviews. It's a bit tiring. I think everyone will agree. You switch off the TV as soon as the interviews are about to happen. But Pádraig Ó Tuama, now Mayo, we should always expect that Mayo will bring the stories, but once again they've brought the story here. So Ballina, Stephenites and Knockmore, both Mayo clubs, ensured their progression to the quarterfinals of the Mayo Club Championship with wins on Sunday. So Ballina beat Claremorris by 10 points. Knockmore beat Kiltane by 16. So Ballina and Knockmore will meet in their final game in Group 3 of that championship. So it could appear to be a dead rubber. They might both progress anyway. But Pádraig Ó Tuama, of course, a Mayo panellist as well, was speaking to Mike Finnerty for Mayo GAA TV after his Ballina side won. We have a video clip as well, so it kind of explained itself. So this is Mike Finnerty speaking to Pádraig Ó Tuama.
All or nothing when you play Knockmore in a couple of weeks, but anytime Ballina play Knockmore over the years, it's a right good battle. Are you dying to test yourselves against them?
Yeah, we'll go out and beat them in 2 weeks.
I love it. Any particular reason?
No.
Just because?
Just because.
Is that the way the Stephenites now are looking at this championship? It doesn't matter who, where, when. That's the mindset.
Yeah. Beat anybody we come out against this year. Simple as.
Pádraig, I don't think there's any need to ask you a follow-up question. Evan...
Amazing is that?
It's good. I mean, I like the way that... is that their normal jersey? They wear the Mayo jersey. That's it. We're just...
I think so. It's a cocky thing. So doubling down on that cockiness clearly with post-match interviews. I love Evan Regan as well. The clip cut off it there, but he was asked, what do you think? And he said, I'm always confident. So he was a little bit more reserved, I guess, than Pádraig Ó Tuama. But any particular reason? No, just because. It's as someone pointed out on Twitter, it's going to lead to a lot more cranes and people trying to peer over the fence to watch that match in a couple of weeks' time. So it adds a bit of intrigue to the GAA, I think, a bit of SmackTalk.
People are going to sign up to Mayo TV. Do you remember the reverse of this was when Johnny Cooper was asked about Carlo away in the championship on the Sunday game when the draw was made? Remember, they make the draws in like October, November. It's ludicrous to make the draw so far away from that point. And he's like, oh yeah, it was a tough place to go. Well, in fairness to Johnny Cooper, that ended up being one of the very last times that we saw Diarmuid Connolly starting a match for the Dubs because of the controversy that came from it. So maybe he knew something we don't.
I mean, yeah, that is the complete opposite. Nobody wants to see that, and nobody wants to see an interview where you're not at least a little bit honest. You could say we're clearly the favourites here, but you have to respect your opposition. But it'll be a tough match. Is a bit of a stretch. We had the famous GAA SmackTalk, of course, Kieran Donaghy to Joe Brawley. What do you think of that? After the 2014 All-Ireland, Donaghy on a high had scored 1-2 in that match. I don't know if it counts if it's after the fact. I prefer when SmackTalk occurs in the order in which Pádraig O'Hara has done it. So when you tell someone you're going to do it, as I said, that's more impressive. Another example of the post, the reverse way of doing it, is Darren Hughes. So I had to sneak in a Monaghan story to this one. So Monaghan and Tyrone, naturally enough, have a natural rivalry, bordering counties, and in the I think it was the 2014 All-Ireland quarter-final. So the previous year had been Sean Kavanagh pulling down Conor McManus as he was through on goal. Monaghan were 2 points down. A goal would have won them that All-Ireland quarter-final. Joe Brawley famously, with his comments towards Sean Kavanagh in the studio afterwards. The following year, then they played again. So Darren Hughes was sent off. I think we actually have a GIF of that incident that we can probably play on screen. But Darren Hughes ruffled the hair of Tiernan McCann, a Tyrone player. So Marty Duffy, the referee, gave Darren Hughes a red card for this. It was harsh, to say the least. That's not just Monaghan bias coming through.
It was ludicrous.
It was ridiculous. He ruffled his hair. But we may have an image that we can put up on screen. We may not. But it's Darren Hughes tweeting, petting his dog at night time, so you can see on screen the incident. But Darren Hughes came back to his house that night, tweeted a photograph saying he was petting his dog all evening, and she hasn't budged. So I think the worst thing about the image as well was Darren Hughes' headboard. It got a lot of publicity because his headboard looked like it was from the 1950s on his bed. But another interesting example of GAA SmackTalk, and something that I think you'll agree, Ger, we'd like to see a lot more of. So fair play to Pádraig O'Hara, and I'm gonna try and find a stream for that match in a couple of weeks.
We're looking for famous examples of GAA SmackTalk, and we couldn't find that many. Like, no. Tommy spent all day yesterday. Apparently John Kiley, the Waterford boss back in 2007, Waterford hadn't won a Munster for 19 years, and they were playing Paddy O'Shea's Clare, and he called them out and said they were going to win that game by a couple of points, and lo and behold, they did actually win it. But that's there are not a whole heap of examples of this. Sorry.
I was looking around last night.
Dinny Cowell, I forgot about this one. I've just remembered it. When he was the manager of the Antrim Hurlers, Dinny Cowell said that Antrim were going to beat Cork or Tip. It might have been Tip, might have been Cork. And it was as believable as the manager of the Antrim Hurlers now saying that they would beat Tip. And I don't know if it was one of those games where 11 goals were scored or maybe 15 goals were scored, but it didn't happen the way that Dinny said it was going to happen. And that might have put back the whole ethos of SmackTalk in the GAA another generation. People looked around and they went, oh, that's what happens to you when you poke the bear. Don't poke the bear.
Yeah. I did find a couple of examples where Davy Fitz and Brian Cody traded jobs. Well, Davy Fitz traded jobs towards Brian Cody, but it was fairly weak stuff. It wasn't personal. It wasn't harsh. It was kind of just a little bit antsy, I guess is the word. But possibly it happens at club level more than inter-county level, because at club level you've got the parish rivalry, you've got people who know each other quite well. It doesn't happen as much at inter-county. So.
Yeah, and it needs to be made public. 0879 180 180 if you want to share your opinions on this. Some people were suggesting Gerlock Nan, we're going to do it at half-time, but when Marty asked him what's going to happen, but the trouble with that is that's not smack talk that the opposition are actually going to hear. He's going back out onto the field. That would need to have been broadcast to the stadium so that Offaly could see it and go, what did he say? But that didn't happen. So that was kind of a secret below the radar. That's him, that's his, he's buzzed. He's just come from delivering one of those half times and looking in the whites of the eyes of the mad Claremen who are about to deliver glory, and he knows what's going to happen. And so that doesn't count. I'm sorry, I'm not having that one. So if anybody wants to give us any more, go for it. Use the hashtag OTBAM as well. OTBAM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We have a brilliant hour lined up for you here between 9 and 10. Ken Doherty's going to join us. Going to chat with boxing impresario Eddie Hearn as well. Deal or No Deal is up next. Keep an eye out for this week's episode of Andy Lee Meets in the ad break.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
There's a growing hostility towards cyclists. We're somehow seen as a nuisance, when in fact we're just people trying to get to work.
I've never ever gotten one bad word said to me about my sexuality, or from the opposition, or from, actually in one bad time, the girl was marking me so tightly, I was like, I have a girlfriend.
I'm not the person I was 10 years ago, and that doesn't worry me. I know I can play good enough golf.
Don't miss the panel every Saturday afternoon, only on Off the Ball.
Looking forward to talking to you about your life, career, your process, and why you act.
Once you say something's your next step, then you and others feel like you have to make that step. In all honesty, obviously this is what we should be recording, and we probably will be, but like, the big fear is that you go somewhere and you fail.
He wears the black jump.
Now that the UEFA Champions League has returned, OTB has teamed up with Pepsi Max and Doritos to bring you another brilliant roadshow, but with a difference. Our very own Nathan Murphy will be joined by David Myler.
I just seen Kenny Dalglish out of the corner of my eye.
Chris Sutton, Stilian Petrov, Neil Lennon and Jason McAteer.
You could keep a squad of 20, 22, 23 players happy.
For a very special remote roadshow. It can only be experienced by picking up our special code to view over Zoom, so keep your eyes peeled on how to win on our social channels. Pepsi Max and Doritos, it's back, get ready. See otbsports.com or search OTB Sports in the App Store for more.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
So what are we at? 6 minutes past 9 here on OTB AM. Episode 4 of our new series, Andy Lee Meets, on OTB sees Andy chat with Irish actor Peter Coonan. Be sure to keep an eye out for the full interview with Peter, which will be released on our YouTube channel this Thursday. It will also be played in full on this Sunday's Off the Ball show. Andy Lee Meets in association with the all-new Seat Leon, the brand's first fully connected car. Time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros. After my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting what I've done. Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Right, Phil Egan is here with us because it is time for Deal or No Deal. Manchester United are reportedly to be increasingly frustrated at the slow pace of discussions with Dortmund as they try to sign Jadon Sancho. Yesterday, the German runners-up sporting director Michael Zorc said, "We plan on having Jadon Sancho in our team this season. The decision is final." That sounds like the decision is final to me. I mean, I take Michael Zorc at his word. He says the decision is final. Game over as far as I'm concerned. I think that answers all our questions. Talks are expected to continue into the coming days, apparently. He doesn't always mean what he says. They want a reported £108 million sterling, 120 million euros. Manchester United believe this is an excessive fee. What about COVID? What about Brexit? What about some other stuff that might lessen the amount of money we have? Very briefly, considering his talent and marketability and how much he hates Manchester City, as we established on last week's The Beef is Real, how much is Sancho actually worth, Phil? What's he really worth?
Well, it's hard to put a price on it because of what's gone on in the last few months. But, you know, you look at when United go in for these big deals, they obviously pay a lot more because clubs see them coming and they think, yeah, here's Manchester United. They have loads of cash and they're trying to get back to the top. They want to be winning Premier League titles and Champions League titles again. We have something they want, so let's whack on a bit of money. Similar to when you go abroad and they see the big Irish head in you and they think, there's a tourist, let's charge you a bit more. And that's unfortunately what United have to pay for at the moment. But looking at them last night against FC Copenhagen, and there's definitely a need to get a player like Sancho because at times they were slow and ponderous in attack, and they need somebody like Sancho who can give them that X factor. And they've obviously got plenty of pace in the attack, and obviously Martial was excellent, especially kind of the second half onwards. We know how good Rashford can be on his day. But just watching United at times, we're trying to work out what they're trying to do. As soon as teams kind of sit deep against them, do they have players that can, break the lines? And Sancho's one of those players. And obviously, Bruno Fernandes is the creator that you could see last night. He was trying things, but gave the ball away on numerous occasions because just couldn't get that final ball in. But they found a way. But they need to strengthen, and I think last night showed that. So can you put a price on?
Yeah, give me put a price on it. Come on.
Like what? Are United thinking 100 million? Do they not want to go with the three figures?
So can I just ask, if you're Manchester United and you get this player, and the difference between 100 and 120 million is, obviously it's 20 million, but actually the difference between 100 and 120 million is the ability to spend that 20 million on somebody else. If you don't have somebody else who's going to immediately become a first team squad member, who you're then also going to have to pay wages to, it's a false economy not to spend the extra money on this player who is 20, who is English, who hates Manchester City, who is going to improve your team. It's like messing around with the Harry Maguire transfer last year when they didn't need to. What they needed to do was get Maguire in, allow him to settle, give him the time to hit the ground running. It's one of the many contributory factors to their poor start that we talked about with Andy Mitten a little bit earlier on. 4 wins in 14 games. Obviously, Pogba was injured. They didn't have Bruno. Mason Greenwood wasn't yet in the first team, and their goalkeeper was having a crisis of confidence. Get the players in early, do the deals, go and say, we're Manchester United, we're going to pay the 120 million. Yeah. It's only... So I'm looking at the record transfer fees here, right? Neymar, 222 million. Mbappe, 135 million. João Felix, 126 million. João Felix is actually the best example here of a similar deal to this. But I'll move on. Antoine Griezmann, 120 million euro. Philippe Coutinho, 120 million euro. And then you get to 105 for Dembele and 105 for Pogba. It's 100 for Hazard. Ronaldo's last deal was 100 for somebody who at that stage I think was already 29 or 30. And I just think that this makes a lot of sense. Buy him, spend the money.
But also as well, imagine what that does for the squad and the club if they sign Sancho. The boost it gives them. Obviously, financially it won't be a boost, but it could be in the future. He's only 20. He's got a great career ahead of him. He's been brilliant for Dortmund. He's obviously broken into the English team as well. And he's going to improve the United team and just get it done. It's not as if they have to pay the 120 up front.
No.
They can do it in installments. They have the money. They just don't like being mugged off. And that's the feeling that you get from United at the moment, where they're thinking, how dare you, Borussia Dortmund, name a price for us? We don't think that price is fair, so we're not going to pay it. That's all well and good, but if United don't start next season well, then the pressure will already start mounting on Solskjaer. When you think only a few weeks ago, things were great. They obviously finished a little bit sluggish at the end of the season, but they got third place. So yeah. you want to hit the ground running, and Jadon Sancho allows you to do that.
There was a moment at the end of the match last night where you mentioned the reliance, Phil, on Bruno. I mean, he went over with, I think it was just cramp, but there was that split-second moment where you're like, oh no, Bruno's going to miss the Europa League semi-final, potentially the final. Is that a worry? Is that if Bruno happens to get injured at some stage, that the strength and depth in that United midfield just isn't good enough?
Well, it isn't. And Fernandes has played so much football for United in the second half of the season. Obviously, there was a break in between. But you think of even the FA Cup quarter-final where Solskjaer made changes against Norwich, but Fernandes was in there. And he's just become that important a player for them that if he's not in the team, they just don't look as good. Now, he was quiet enough in the first half, but then he got his shooting boots on, and we know how good he is from the penalty spot. I was even impressed with how he changed his penalty last night, where you thought he might do the little skip. He just absolutely hammered it into the goal. Not even as good as the keeper was last night, even he couldn't save it. But that's what you're trying to build. You're trying to build strength and depth. It's all well and good having a fairly decent first 11, but injuries happen, and you need to be able to have backup. And Sancho obviously becomes a starter. So if something happened to him, you've got players like Greenwood that can come in, and even by then Greenwood could be a starter himself as a central striker. So you just need strength and depth, especially given what's going to be ahead next season, because the season is a bit more condensed as well.
Yeah, 100%. The price is 120 million, therefore you're either willing to pay it or you're not, and that's his value. The market decides its value, and it turns out the market is saying it's 120 million. I mean, they can negotiate and they can try and save some money here and save 5 million there. I don't think it's going to do them any good in the long run, because ultimately this is going to drag on. We do have an actual deal. We've been talking about this now for a couple of weeks. Greek defender Kostas Tsimikas is a Red and will play for Liverpool next season. Where else do the club need to strengthen to retain their title?
I've kind of thought that they would definitely need a better backup goalkeeper. As good as Alisson is, he had injuries. He picked up an injury in the first game of last season against Norwich. Adrian came in and he did okay. He obviously had his moment in the limelight where he saved the penalty in the Super Cup to beat Chelsea. But then think back to the Atletico game, and I still firmly believe if Alisson was in goal that night, Liverpool would have beaten Atletico Madrid and they'd be looking forward to a Champions League quarter-final in the coming days. So they need something better there. I think obviously Lovren is gone. Whatever Liverpool fans thought of Lovren, he was still a centre-half. They need probably another centre-half to bring in. Maybe, like, they've got a couple of young players obviously in Vandenberg and whoever, but they're still quite young. Fabinho can obviously slot in there, but ideally they'd probably want another one because Matip has been injury prone obviously last season. Joe Gomez has picked up the odd injury here and there as well. So, and I think up front they definitely need a better backup than Divock Origi.
Is it wild to think James Milner could have like a 3-year career as their third or fourth choice centre back at this point?
Do you know what? He's played in pretty much every position. I'm sure actually
he'd be really good.
He mightn't even be a bad option in goal. Who knows? But yeah, James Milner will cover a number of positions, but I still felt that they had to get an out-and-out left back to cover Andy Robertson, and Tsimikas obviously gives that. But I think, yeah, there's talk of Ismail Assar from Watford, a player that would have impressed for Senegal at the World Cup in Russia. Saw him playing for Rennes when they had a decent run in the Europa League the season before last, and ultimately they got beaten by Arsenal, but he was impressive. I expected him to be excellent for Watford. He had his moments, obviously, most notably against Liverpool in that 3-0 win. And this is a player that could play in the left, could play in the right, could play down the centre. So I think he'd be an upgrade on Origi.
Palace are interested in him in the papers today as a potential replacement, which might mean that Zaha's available at a knockdown price. Would you buy Zaha?
If you're Jurgen Klopp?
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to have to. When you say knockdown price, you're still talking 50 million. And I can't see, if Klopp wouldn't spend that on Timo Werner, I can't see how he's going to spend that on Zaha. I'd imagine, like, he is the kind of player that Klopp likes in terms of what he can do, and you know he's obviously pacey, bag of tricks, brilliant on the counter attack. But I think it's a lot of money to pay for a player that you're not guaranteeing that he's going to start. Whereas Sarr is half the price and can play in a few different positions across the front three.
Out of 10, Sarr to Liverpool?
I'd still be cold enough on it. I still think maybe a 5 or a 6.
Okay. Chelsea are believed to have agreed personal terms with Kai Havertz. Bayer Leverkusen want at least 90 million sterling for the 21-year-old talisman. The German side crashed out of the Europa League last night and lost their last chance to secure Champions League football, which might hasten the young guns' exit, it says here. Should Frank Lampard push this through, does Havertz score more goals than top scorer Tammy Abrahamson, who's nodded 18 times in all competitions last season, if he comes to England?
I kind of see Havertz playing as a midfielder. So I don't know what Lampard, his preferred position is. He's obviously deviated, sometimes playing 3 at the back, but that tends to indicate, we see with Arsenal as well, I know we'll talk about them in a bit, but that tends to indicate that you're not happy with your defence. So if Lampard can get those players in at the back, maybe he can play the formation that he wants. It looks like he wants to play a 4-3-3. So I actually would see Havertz as one of the midfield 3 with N'Golo Kante, and whether it's Kovacic or Mason Mount, maybe he switches between the two. But Havertz can play, he could play in your front 3 as well, but I'm looking at obviously Pulisic and Ziyech playing flanking Timo Werner, and look, these are all interchangeable.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of having a player that good.
So force it through, yes?
Yeah, I think it'll happen, and you know, it's real intent from Chelsea. I said all this, by the way, is just going to add the pressure to Lampard, who has had an okay season. I'm struggling to see why he was named as one of the nominees for the Premier League Manager of the season.
That was embarrassing.
Albeit, now this is the Premier League awards. These are ones you can vote for yourself.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah, well, Brendan Rodgers was on that as well. I mean, I'm looking at Wolves are playing tonight. Nuno Espirito Santo. Not only did they get
not in the Premier League though, Phil.
Nigel Pearson should have got it.
Nigel Pearson. It should have been nominated.
What about Ralph
anyway.
Hasenhüttl?
Hasenhüttl, yeah. I mean, the 9-0 probably counts against you, but at the same time, the recovery from the 9-0 should also count. Liverpool want to sell on midfielder Harry Wilson for 20 million is what they're looking for. This is the world is full of ex-managers who signed players on big money from the subs bench at Liverpool. But Leeds, Newcastle, Palace and Southampton are all linked with the 23-year-old who impressed while at Bournemouth last season. Who should snap him up? Is there any argument for Liverpool keeping him at Anfield?
I don't think so. I think Liverpool have their hope there in Harvey Elliott. Obviously a few years younger, but similar player, left-footed, could play on the right-hand side. But they've really got high hopes for Elliott, and it looks like he's got a big future ahead of him. Harry Wilson.
Exactly the type of thing that you want is 20 million coming in for these players.
Absolutely, and if Bournemouth were still in the Premier League, you know that they would have paid it. And he had his moments with Bournemouth, but towards the end of the season when Bournemouth needed wins, Harry Wilson wasn't getting in the team. But on his day, if he plays in a team, you mentioned Leeds there. Leeds, have plenty of possession. They create chances. He is lethal when he gets a chance in front of goal. So I think he'd be a good signing for several Premier League clubs, and 20 million in the current climate. Okay, I know things have changed a little bit in the last few months, but it's not that much for a player of Harry Wilson's.
So 9 out of 10 he's gone from Liverpool.
Oh yeah, I think they definitely want him gone. They want Grujic gone as well.
Wolves expect to extend manager Nuno Espirito Santo's contract before the Premier League restarts. How far are Wolves from becoming a Champions League side?
Well, I mean, they could do it in the next few days if they win the Europa League, but I think they'll have their work cut out against Sevilla tonight, and if they were to beat Sevilla, they'd obviously have to play Manchester United, which would be quite the tie. But no, I think we've spoken about this before. I think they're brilliant counter-attacking team. Can they hold on to their best players? Can they hold on to the likes of Jimenez and Neves, Traore, who, as good as he is, doesn't always start, but I have to say he's one of my favourite players to watch, because when he's good, he just causes havoc. But I just don't see them being able to break into the top four, because maybe the style they play, they're very much a counter-attacking team. They'll give all the big clubs serious headaches. Obviously, they did a double over Manchester City this season. But when it comes to playing teams that they have to break down, sometimes they can't get the job done. Okay,
we've 2 minutes left here to rattle through these. Former Arsenal midfielder Aaron Ramsey is apparently, I don't know how they know this already, but apparently he's been told he's not part of Andrea Pirlo's plans at Juventus and is set to leave the club, according to the Mirror. He started 11 Serie A matches last season. Good value on 250 grand a week sterling. That contract runs until 2023. Is this the new Gareth Bale? Is he going to sit there riding the pine and counting his cash? Or will someone come in and pay a portion of his wages to take him off Juventus's books?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that. Do you know what, if he gets pre-season with Juventus, maybe he can show Pirlo that he has got a role to play. But we've seen this with Premier League players where they let their contracts run down, they go over to Juventus. We saw even with Emery Can, like he had high hopes thinking he was leaving Liverpool, and look what they've done since. And Can obviously had to go on loan to Borussia Dortmund. So it doesn't always bode well, that move away from the Premier League. I've no problem with players trying. I think it's admirable that they will go abroad, but there's certainly Premier League clubs that would like to have Aaron Ramsey in their team, but they'd have to come to some sort of a deal, because 250 grand a week is
too much.
Yeah, it's a lot of money to be paying.
Don't move. Sit and enjoy the life in Turin. I mean, you're going to be living in a nice gaff. You've got like everything you want. Don't move. Take that money and learn Italian and come back and go, yeah, it was unfortunate. It didn't work out for me. We expect Willian to Arsenal to be confirmed today/tomorrow. How far are the Gunners from a return to the top four, and where else do they need to strengthen? In 30 seconds for me, Phil.
They need defenders, more defenders, and a few more defenders. That's where the problem is. And we talked about Lacazette yesterday, but one of the things is if they sell him, they get money. They need to strengthen at the back. They've got Saliba, who was on loan at Saint-Etienne. He's so young. It's a lot to ask of a young lad to basically be your main central defender. Do they stick with three at the back? If David Luiz is part of their defence, they have to go with three at the back. I'm not sure if that's the long-term goal for Arteta, but he might have to stick with it for the next season, because unless they can get defenders in, they're not going to be getting anywhere near the top four.
It's a long-term project for them, and at least they're trending in the right direction. Now, the links between Jeff Hendrick and Newcastle continue, with The Guardian reporting the deal will happen. We'll keep you posted on that one on otbsports.com and the OTB Sports app.
I signed for them after the Euros. After my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting what I've done. Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to go to Ken Doherty in just a moment. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, the WhatsApp number is 087 9180 180. Shane, obviously you are a regular snooker aficionado here. What do you expect is going to happen? Is Ronnie going to win it from here?
Like he's... before the match against Mark Williams started yesterday, so his quarter-final, I was supremely confident. So he breezed past Tepchai Onu 10-1 in the first round, then beat Ding Junhui, his good friend, 13-10 in the second round. Mark Williams is 6-2 up as of yesterday. They'll resume this afternoon and play to a finish this evening. So 6-2 behind, first to 13. If anyone's going to come back from that sort of deficit, Ronnie will, but he has to win the afternoon session this afternoon to have any chance. But if he gets past Mark Williams, I can't see past him. Judd Trump is behind as well, so the reigning champion, Karen Wilson, his good friend, is beating him. So that's going to be a tough one for him to overcome, and we'll chat to Ken in a minute about the curse of the Crucible. No first-time winner has ever defended it, so that's probably playing on Judd Trump's mind. But I fancy Ronnie to do it if he can overcome Mark Williams. That's too big a deficit, though. Surely at this point, you can't kind of just give somebody like Mark Williams a 4-frame head start, can you? For anyone but Ronnie. I mean, it depends on his head. If he goes into a session in the right frame of mind, I mean, there's times where he isn't in the right frame of mind. You mentioned the James Cahill match last year where he lost to the amateur, the young guy James Cahill. He came up for one session. He had a cold. He turned up to the next session with his head shaved, a la Britney Spears. So clearly he wasn't in the right frame of mind to be playing. He just wasn't at it really in that game last year. The previous year he lost to Ali Carter. I mean, he had that famous barge incident. I actually have the transcript here. He pushed into Ali Carter and said, "That's for being Mr. Angry. You shoulder barged me earlier. I thought I'd give you one back." And Mr. Carter said, "Thank you. It's very nice of you." O'Sullivan said, "Stop being angry then." The referee told him to calm down. And Ronnie says, "Yeah, I'm cool as a cucumber." So this is in front of a crowd at the Crucible Theatre. Snooker doesn't get this kind of argy-bargy, as I said, too often. So long may it continue. Well, certainly, it brings talking points. Ken Doherty, good morning to you. How are you?
Very good morning. How are you, lads?
Yeah, very good. Before we get into the snooker, Jadon Sancho, do you want him or not?
Absolutely, yeah. We could do with a few players, and he'd be one of the best players, young players in Europe. Yeah, I think he'd be a great addition to the United team. So pay the money. Stop. Hey, listen, it's not my money. It's Ed Woodward's in Manchester United. I wish he'd pay you. He should have paid for Fernandes last summer as well. Exactly. And waited until January. Yeah. So the track record says pay the money, I think. Anyway, look, absolutely. Sorry, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. No, you're dead right. Come here. I'd rather talk about football anyway. Is this not the perfect World Championship with all of the stuff that's going on around it? Like, do you enjoy the circus and the carnival that comes with Ronnie, or do you think it's a distraction from the stuff that's happening? No, I'll tell you, I love watching him play. I mean, you know, there's no better sight in the world when Ronnie is in full flow. And he's great for the game in that respect. You know, brings a lot of fans to the game. Has done for the best part. Well, since 1992, he's been absolutely brilliant. So I love him from that respect. But I don't love the way he goes on with his comments afterwards. I think it's very disrespectful to a lot of the guys who probably look up to him on the tour. A lot of the younger guys, particularly, and he just like slagged them off basically as if they were almost like dirt on a shoe that you can cut his arm and leg off and still beat them. So I can't. That doesn't wash with me. I don't care how good you were or how big of a name you were. You have to have respect for your fellow pros. You have to have respect, full stop. That's the way I was brought up, and I don't like it when people do that. I have to stand up and make a voice, like, you know, because you can't have people, you know, slagging off the rest of the tour. I mean, it was only a few years ago he wanted to go on breakaway tour because he wasn't happy with some of the venues that he was playing in. That's Ronnie. That's what you get with him. But I don't like it. It doesn't wash with me, I'm afraid. Why do you think he's doing it? He loves the attention. He loves to make the headlines. I think that's the reason why. I think maybe it's backfired on him a little in this match because yesterday he didn't look like on it at all and maybe distracted by the attention he was getting from his comments the previous day. Mark Williams has played really well.
And from 2-1 down, he's 6-2 up, and Ronnie's in major, major trouble. He needs a big start this afternoon and this evening, particularly this afternoon, because if he doesn't play well this afternoon, he could be out, And it's the championship is there for anybody to win, and he was a big favourite. Judd Trump's in trouble as well, as Shane was talking about. So it's been a great championship now. Even during this COVID crisis with no crowds, which has been terrible, but it's still been a great championship. It's had a lot of great talking points.
Sorry, Shane, I'm just going to do one last point on this. I don't know if you're a big golf fan at the moment, but Brooks Koepka is somebody who has a bang of Ronnie O'Sullivan off him, actually, where he kind of... He almost has to talk himself into caring about what's happening. He can't get up for any of the minor tournaments. It's only the majors. And then last Saturday, had a big cut-off. Dustin Johnson was like, well, I mean, Dustin Johnson's never won from this position, really, has he? Like, he's going to struggle. And then went out and was 77th of 78 on the final round. So it blew up in his face, and that was the first time we'd seen him. I wonder, is there a bang of that off Ronnie trying to, like, it felt a little bit like he was protesting too much. That these guys are rubbish. I can beat them anyway.
Well, I mean, if you look at the stats, I mean, the game is stronger than it's ever been. The standard is as strong as it's ever been, stronger than I've ever known. And anyway, and particularly, the lads at the top, like the likes of Mark Williams and Higgins and O'Sullivan, they're still there after 25 years. Yes, I understand that, but the standard in the middle of the table and the bottom of the table is as strong as it's ever been. So I don't really know what he's on about. Maybe he's just got better with age. Snooker is one of those games. It's not a physical game. So even as you mature into your 30s and 40s, you can still play to a high standard. Ronnie is doing that. Mark Williams is doing that. And John Higgins are still doing that in their mid-40s, which is quite remarkable. We'll never see the likes of these guys again, probably not.
Ken, just on Twitter last night, Stephen Hendry was asked about what did you think about Ronnie's comments about the youngsters coming through, and his reply was not far off the mark. So just to play devil's advocate on it, and Ronnie obviously has said controversial things in the past, but how accurate would it be that, maybe his argument that some of the players a little bit further down are not as committed as he is? I know he talks different times about diet, about nutrition, about the need to have focuses away from the table. So is there any truth to this, or is he just railing against authority?
I think he's just railing. I'm surprised Stephen Hendry actually saying that, because, as I said, the standard is we have so many guys coming from China now. You saw that Yan Bingtao, he's number 20, he's in the top 16. There's another guy, Zhu Yulong and Zhao Xintong, really good top players. You've got Karen Wilson now, who's on the precipice of knocking the defending champion out. He's only 28. And you've got a whole host of young players coming through. And as I said, the standard is probably as high as it's ever been. So I don't agree with anything they're saying. It's just that Ronnie is an enigma. He's like a one-off, and he plays the game as like he's playing in practice. And it's very, very difficult to do that. Mark Williams is a similar type in that regard, and they're just like guys that have sort of broke the mold with a lot of the guys that have gone before them, and maybe as Ronnie has got older, he's still one of the best players in the world and still capable of winning this World Championship. But I don't agree with what they're saying. I'm surprised at Stephen Hendry as well.
I mean, you made the argument on the BBC immediately after Ronnie's interview that, some of these young players will probably look up to Ronnie. Some of them might have picked up the game for the first time.
He's an inspiration to them. Yeah, he's an inspiration to them. A lot of these young guys probably took up the game because of Ronnie O'Sullivan, And, what other sport would you get like one of your best players ever that's ever picked up the game? Can you imagine Roger Federer saying something like that? Can you imagine Dan Carter saying something? Can you imagine even Ronaldo or Messi talking about the fellow pros like that? It's just not. For me, it's not good. People will laugh at it. They say, it's just Ronnie and all that. But I don't like it at all. It's disrespectful. It's dishonourable. He has a duty to the game as an ambassador, which he has been great for the game in other respects, the way he plays. But I think he has a duty as an ambassador to the game and an inspiration to his fellow pros and young kids who are coming up. I don't like to see people talk like that.
Is there an argument then that to take the devil's advocacy a slight bit further, that maybe snooker needs the headlines, that far from the heyday of the 80s, but that even if it is a negative headline, that at least people are talking about it.
Well, listen, Shane, would you, if you were Ronnie O'Sullivan, would you talk like that? Would you disrespect your fellow pros? Would you disrespect your people at work, in your office, where you are now, just to make headlines? Is that right? Does that make it right?
Shane would, Ken. That's the.
Would you do that just to make headlines so you can be anonymous? I don't think. You can make an argument for it, but I still don't believe it's right.
Well, it lacked class.
I was just glad that he didn't.
Yeah, it's not class.
That was the thing, and it's kind of a level of narcissism that, look, we could, as I said earlier, we could all go broke trying to work out what the hell goes on in Ronnie O'Sullivan's mind. It's an interesting topic. Can you talk briefly about Mark Williams? Like, how aggressive a player is he at the moment, at this stage of his career? Because he's kind of in bonus territory, added time, call it what you will, but like there's a World Championship right there for him right now.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he's playing with an attitude like he won the World Championship a couple of years ago, and anything else is a bonus now. But he's still a fierce competitor. I mean, you saw the way he played yesterday against Ronnie. He totally outplayed him, for 5 frames. And it makes him, with that type of laid-back attitude that he's had all his life, but now he sort of, after winning that third World Championship, he sort of says, well, everything else is a bonus now. Nobody's expecting me to win. It's a good attitude to have. It takes a bit of pressure off you. And the way he played yesterday was like something like the way he played when he won the World Championship. I wouldn't discount him winning this World Championship again. I mean, if Judd Trump goes out, which it looks like he may do in the top half, I mean, Corin Wilson is going to play maybe Anthony McGill in the semi-final. Mark Selby looks like he's going to beat Neil Robertson. And then you possibly Mark Williams, unless Ronnie really pulls something out of the bag today, Mark Williams is going to play Mark Selby in the semi-final. So any of those guys, and particularly Mark Williams, because he's been there and done it, can certainly win this championship again. And that would be an unbelievable story.
Can I ask you about that Crucible curse then, Ken? So for people who might not be familiar with this, any first-time winner of the Crucible Snooker Championship has never successfully defended their title the following year. I mean, even Stephen Hendry, the king of the Crucible, he wins in 1990 for the first time, and John Parrott wins it the following year. I mean, you're probably one of the players that came closest to breaking it. You won in 97 and lost narrowly to John Higgins the following year in the final. So is there something in that Judd Trump is possibly feeling the pressure this year because of this curse?
Absolutely, yeah. It looks that way. I mean, from day one, he hasn't played the way he's been playing all season. I mean, he's had a record-breaking season. He's won 6 ranking tournaments. Nobody has ever done that in one season. He's number 1 by a mile, no matter what happens after this championship. But the Crucible course and the weight of the Crucible course, in a funny way, I mean, it's been at the Crucible now since 1977, so 43 years. And nobody, as you said, has ever defended the first-time winner. And it looks like it's weighing on Judd Trump's mind at the moment because he hasn't played anything near the way he's been playing this season. And that's just the way it goes, But Corin Wilson has played very, very well. But since day one, from the first match against Tom Ford, that he was lucky to get through Judd Trump, he hasn't really progressed. We thought over the best of 25 he'll get better and better, but it just hasn't happened for him.
Do you think he'll get stronger as the tournament progresses? I know we've probably seen in the last couple of days Mark Selby, who wasn't maybe that impressive in the early stages. He's 11-5 up against Neil Robertson. I know even yourself in 97, you had those kind of heavy wins where you won, I think it was 13-3 against Steve Davis and thrashed Alain Robidoux in the semi-final. So maybe winning matches comfortably with a session to spare as it goes on might make it easier.
But for Judd Trump now, he's 10-6 down and he looked to be really struggling. I was commentating on Selby Robertson, but I was looking at Judd Trump against Corin Wilson on the other monitor. A lot of it. I shouldn't tell you that really as a commentator, but there you go. But it was quite interesting to see how he was playing. But he looked to be really struggling and he missed a few crucial frame balls. He looked really under pressure and it looked like, there's a bit of needle between himself and Corin Wilson. And it looked like to be getting to Judd Trump more than it was Wilson. So 10-6 down, he's got to really pull something, just like O'Sullivan has, out of the bag. But the way Corin Wilson's been playing and the form of Judd Trump in this championship, I don't think it's going to happen. I think the defending champion is going to go out today.
What's the needle?
They just had a little spat in the, with each other when I think Corin Wilson played him in a semi-final or one of the tournaments, and he just said he wanted it more. It looked like he wanted to win more than Judd Trump did, and sort of it spat like a, or it started a little spat of words, handbags really, you know what I mean? But you know, I don't mind that little bit of spice, that's not bad.
It's the type of thing that people take personally, though, at this level. It's like
I'd rather the guys would slag off each other. You know what I mean? I'd rather Ronnie slag off somebody else, but not
everybody.
I don't mind if he says it, not slag off, but I'd just say if he was playing his opponent, I say, well, I'm better than him. I should be him, and I should do this and I should do that. But you don't disrespect guys who are trying to make it, struggling on the tour. You don't disrespect them by saying, well, if I cut my arm and leg off, I'd still beat them. I don't like that. But I do like a little bit of spice or a little bit of banter between players, yes. That's okay.
Ronnie's punching down. At least the two lads are punching each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Another old boy doing good stuff at the moment is John Higgins, who hit the 147 last week.
Yeah, unfortunately he went out of the tournament, but a nice little feather in his cap. There's only been 7 players who have made a 147 at the World Championship, and he's now in that magnificent 7. So it was a great achievement. I still think there might be another 147 before the World Championship is finished. I think it helps a lot of the players that there's no sort of crowd there, so it sort of eases the pressure a little bit, but there is still a bit of pressure out there because it is the World Championship. It's a bit weird watching it, with the atmosphere, nobody there, even though they have the false clapping and stuff like that. Some guy pressing a button every time it's a good shot or a century or frame ball or something like that. But it's just very, very strange without the crowd this year, I must say.
That needle you mentioned, Ken, I mean, we were speaking about the shoulder barge a couple of years ago between Ronnie and Ali Carter before you came on. But the incident between Anthony McGill and Jamie Clark in their match, I mean, so for people who didn't see it, maybe Jamie Clark was supposedly standing in Anthony McGill's eye line for maybe 3 or 4 of his shots. McGill took it a bit personally, said it to him, and Jamie Clark took it the wrong way. I think he tweeted in the interval, if you want to dance, let's dance.
Yeah.
I mean, what were your thoughts on that incident, and do you have any examples
I have to. Well, see, it's very tight around the Crucible, and sometimes when you've played a shot from, say, the top end of the table, the black spot end, and you've rolled the white down to the baulk end, and the player comes to the table really quickly, sometimes players, because of Jamie Clark's naivety, I would say, that he stayed down the black end of the table instead of walking up past Anthony McGill back into the baulk end to where the seats are. So he said maybe he's done that a couple of times. I don't think he did it deliberately, but Anthony McGill, he's done it a few times, and Anthony McGill had words with him. What he should have done was had words with the referee and told him, or waited for him, or even called him, say, come on, you can come past me and sit down. That's what he should have done. It shouldn't have really blown into what happened. But what I didn't like was he ran out after him behind the curtain and sort of confronted him backstage. You shouldn't be doing that as a professional. But anyway, it's sorted. And it sort of affected Jamie Clark more than affected Jamie Clark in a wrong way, but affected Anthony McGill in a good way, because he was 8-2 down and came back to 8-7 and eventually beat 13-12. So it sort of had more of an adverse effect on Jamie Clark than it did on Anthony McGill.
Did you have any experiences of that during your own career? I remember you mentioned to me before Steve Davis' clenched fist as maybe
but that's part of the game. I don't mind that. That's good. I like to see people showing a bit of emotion around the table. I don't mind that at all. But sometimes players would complain about other players with the towel, wiping your cue and your eye line, or players standing up and even when they're supposed to be sitting down next to their chair, they'd stand up instead of sit down. I don't like that either. But you just tell the player, can you sit down, please? And most of the time it just passes out without any incident. But this time it sort of got to Anthony McGill.
Do you think you mentioned the behind closed doors element to the Crucible this year, and having been to the Crucible myself the last couple of years, it is quiet in there, but you're fully aware there's 1,000 people sitting silently. Has that behind closed doors element helped the likes of Ronnie, who says he can now stay in a hotel close to the venue, he can walk to the venue, and even the qualifiers like Kurt Mafflin, who have performed well, maybe taking away the crowd takes off a little bit of the pressure for the likes of him?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, any time you be playing Ronnie, it's almost like you play an away game, because 90% of the crowd wants him to win and perform. So and particularly in the Crucible when they're so close to you, that really adds to the pressure to whoever you're playing, but particularly when you're playing the big names like Ronnie or Higgins or Judd Trump or even Williams, So Yeah, it certainly does add a lot more pressure. So that's why I feel like there's going to be more centuries this year than ever before. There was 100 last year. That was the record. I think that's going to be broken this year. I think like we've already had the 147, and I think we've seen some great snooker from the qualifiers. Kurt Mafflin, Anthony McGill, and of course Jamie Clark as well. There's been some great stories along the way, but without the crowd, it does make a huge difference.
You're playing yourself in the World Seniors, I think it is, the Rocket World Seniors coming up soon. Is it Rodney Goggins, a Wexford man, you're playing in the first round?
It is, yeah. There's an All-Ireland clash, and there's an All-Ireland clash between Dennis Taylor and Michael Judge as well, So I didn't get to play at the Crucible this year in the professional championship. I have to settle for the seniors. That's the way life has gone for me, folks.
But that's still the ambition, though. I assume you're still playing up clearly to a high level. So the ambition, I suppose, is still to get back to the Crucible for one last hurrah, maybe. Yeah,
one last hurrah would be nice, all right. Yeah, but it gets more difficult every year. But we'll continue on, Shane, and see how it goes,
Okay, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. And
anytime.
We're going to send you the video of Shane trash talking his colleagues, literally doing that exact thing that you said he wouldn't do. Because
you'll get the headlines. You'll get the headlines, Shane. That's
he got them.
You know I'm a nice guy, Ken.
He backed it up and won. That's the thing. Ronnie. Ronnie hasn't. 6-2 down.
Okay, let's see.
Good stuff, Ken. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads.
It's Ken Doherty. Always great to have him on. Former world champion and obviously part of BBC's commentary team at the moment for the snooker. Talking to us about life at the Crucible. So who's going to win it, Shane?
I mean, I actually think the winner of the Mark Williams-Ronnie O'Sullivan match will win it. And you mentioned Mark Williams there. This would be... We all thought 2018. I was at that tournament and he came into he actually did not expect to win so much that he promised the press that he would come in naked to the press conference afterwards if he won the final. He went on to win. Thankfully, he wore a towel into the press conference and wasn't fully in the book. But he partied for a year. If you follow him on Twitter or Instagram, he just drank, ate, partied for an entire year. And why wouldn't he? He's in his 40s. He's part of that class of 92 with Ronnie and John Higgins. So why wouldn't he party? So if he goes on to win a fourth this year, who knows what he'll do, because he's a serious player, a serious talent, and if he goes on to do it again, then he's a four-time world champion. He'd be one of the greats.
Oh, absolutely. Look, we'll keep a close eye on the snooker for the rest of the week, and you can get more details on it on otbsports.com. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Now, I'm delighted to say we've got Eddie Hearn with us to help us understand what's going on in the world of boxing. It's a big week for Irish boxing, Eddie. We're big fans here of one of the fighters who's on your card, who might be a little bit underappreciated by some of the English boxing fans, but we've been big Eric Donovan fans for the last couple of years, and we reckon he's got a chance this Friday.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do in boxing, to be honest with you. I mean, like you said, quite unknown quantity over here in England, but in the boxing circles, a lot of people giving him a great chance. I was just got off the phone to Brian Peters, actually, who spoke very highly of Eric Donovan, and Tony Bellew as well remembers him from the amateurs, and a very, very good amateur. Of course, I think, was he 5 or 6-time national Irish champion, bronze medalist in the European Championship in 2009 and 10. So, very accomplished fighter. And again, up against a fighter in Zelfa Barrett, who is in his first fight with us, is looking to impress, but has been beaten before and has also been beaten by quite a tricky southpaw. So a lot of people fancy Eric Donovan as an outsider for Friday night.
How have you found that whole experience of putting fights on behind closed doors and that whole kind of making sure that the sport was able to continue at the end of lockdown, essentially, as it was in England?
It's been really challenging. It's been exciting, to be honest with you. I mean, we kind of created this thing at our headquarters in the garden outside, and I'm looking at it now, Fight Camp. It's a fantastic spectacle. And down at the hotel in what is commonly now known as the bubble, it's been really good. The fighters have really embraced it. It's been really safe. Everyone's been getting tested and then isolated. You can't leave your room till you've got your test. Eric had his test yesterday, tested negative, thankfully. So, it's a really good atmosphere amongst the fighters, and it's good to get the sport back up and running, because I'm not a lover of this, studio stuff. I don't feel that a sport as dangerous and as exciting as boxing deserves to be in a dark, dingy studio somewhere. It's not a game show. I wanted to give these guys the platform and the spectacle to go out there and try and put in a good performance. So So it's massive for these guys. The viewing figures are great. There's a lot of attention on the project, and if someone can get a great victory like an Eric Donovan, it'll take their career to a whole new level. The IBF international title is on the line as well for this. So the winner of this fight is going to go into the top 15 in the world.
The actual situation that a lot of people can't travel around the world with quarantine has forced the opportunity for a lot of fighters to come together and make fights like this. For example, maybe Eric wouldn't have got this fight as quickly if lockdown hadn't happened. There's definitely something in that. A lot of sports are looking around at the situation they find themselves in, and because of quarantine, they've been forced to make changes. Are there lessons for boxing in the short term, in the medium term, from what's going on at the moment?
Yeah, it's been great, to be honest with you. I mean, it's given me the excuse to be able to say, and it's a legitimate excuse, everyone knows what's happening in the world, to say to guys, look, this is the fight that we want to make. So will you fight this guy? No, I won't. Okay, we'll see you later in the year. Next. And people like Eric Donovan who are stepping up, and maybe even with Zelfa, I don't think this is a fight that either of them would have jumped at pre-lockdown, but they know that, if they don't make compelling fights now, we're not interested in putting them on the card. And I think for too long, we've been letting, not fighters, but normally managers and advisors get away with the wrong fight commercially. We don't want to see a boring fight. We want to see a competitive fight with two good fighters, two great characters. And, Eric, he loves to talk. We're looking forward to getting him at the press conference tomorrow. And, he's going to build the fight nicely. And Zelfa Barrett looks the part. So I think it's been good for boxing in that respect that we are making sure there are no easy fights. And I think moving forward is something we've got to maintain once we get through the other side.
He's a really good character and also a really good person, which, sometimes in boxing, good guys don't always get the break. So we're thrilled for him and thrilled that he's going to have the opportunity to bring that to a wider audience. You talked about having a chat with Brian Peters. I presume that's about Katie Taylor and her fight against Delphine Persoon next week, which is one of the biggest grudge matches in world boxing at the moment.
Yeah, it's strange seeing Katie in a grudge match, isn't it? I did a press conference the other night on Zoom with the pair of them, and you could cut the tension with a knife. I mean, Katie can be cold, because when you meet someone that is so driven and so single-minded, in her life about what she wants and her goals, but all of a sudden, you've got this other fighter coming in, calling her a paper champ, overrated, she runs, and I could just feel Katie just fuming, basically, and she really wants to win this fight. The first fight at Madison Square Garden was one of the best fights I've ever seen. And, we're just over 10 days away from the rematch, on the White Povetkin card, August 22nd, Saturday night, and I can't wait for that fight. I think Katie really wants to make a statement. You've seen last week a brilliant fight between Terry Harper and Natasha Jonas. This weekend we've got Cecilia Brækhuis against Jessica McCaskill, undisputed fight. And the weekend after, we got another undisputed fight. So I don't even feel like we should even call it women's boxing anymore, to be quite honest with you. I just think it should all be rolled into one, because it's just as entertaining. And I think, Katie has, of course, always been a trailblazer, but coming up in about, 12 days' time is basically one of her defining moments. Through everything that she's achieved, this Delphine Persoon rematch is a fight that she really must win.
It absolutely is, because I think, anybody can look at the first fight objectively and come up with a case for why either of the fighters actually won it. And, I watched it back recently again, and almost all of the Sky commentators that night had Katie Taylor losing. So there was genuine surprise when she did win it. And, look, every great champion has one of those in their repertoire, but they've always come back and won well and decisively the next time. So big fight.
Yeah, and you've got to take your hat off to Katie Taylor. I mean, she'll fight anybody, but she was due to fight Amanda Serrano. Serrano didn't want the fight, and I just said to her, look, do you want me to try Delphine Persoon? And, when I go back to managers and advisors, everybody knows how rough that fight was at Madison Square Garden. I think even Brian Peters and the team probably like, Persoon on 7 weeks' notice. And Katie was just like, yes. The truth is, since that final bell rang, and she went back to the changing rooms, and she even heard that there were people that thought Delphine Persoon won that fight, she wanted that rematch, because she wanted to put it right. In her head, she won the fight. But if there's any doubt, any questions, which there was, she wants to put that out of people's minds. And I think it's quite rare to see a fighter like that jump in at a rematch in such a close fight. You know, a lot of people would say, look, you got the result there, let's move on, let's do Brackhouse, let's do Serrano. But she says, no, I want to do Pursoon again. And it's going to be an amazing event and an amazing fight.
How much longer do you think Katie Taylor is going to be able to fight at this level?
It's a good question. I mean, I think I said to her in a meeting probably about a year ago that, you know, you've probably got 2 or 3 years left. And she looked at me like she was going to kill me. You know, she feels like she's got 10 years left in this sport. You know, I think at the moment she's not showing any signs of decline. But at her age, you know, generally I think the women do peak a little bit later in their careers. You're seeing sort of Brackhouse is in her deep 30s. You know, only really the likes of Terry Harper and people like that coming through are younger. Natasha Jonas is 37. She put in the best best performance of her career on last Friday night. So I think when you look at Katie, you know, the standout fights now are, of course, the Pursoon rematch. We'll see what happens with Serrano. She's been wasting our time. But the Cecilia Brackhouse fight, if she can win this Saturday, is a fight between the undisputed welterweight champion and the undisputed lightweight champion. So I think that's a big fight. And then she talks about other crossover fights, the likes of Cyborg from MMA and Holly Holm and who knows. So I think really once you beat Pursoon and get that done and dusted, and if you can fight Brackhouse and beat her, where else do you go from there? But as you know, she absolutely lives, loves and breathes it, and she doesn't want it to end. You know, boxing is her absolute life, and she's more dedicated than ever.
Eddie, that fight is obviously on the undercard of Dillian Whyte, Alexander Povetkin, but I just want to bring you a quote from Bob Arum in the last couple of days. So he was speaking to TalkSport. He said, Eddie Hearn tells you guys something different from what he tells me. If he wants to push Dillian Whyte to fight the winner of Fury Wilder 3 and to deprive Joshua of the tremendous revenue that would come from a Fury versus Joshua fight, that's on Eddie. So what do you make of Bob Arum kind of suggesting that you'd be depriving Anthony Joshua of a big payday if you're pushing for Dillian to fight Fury?
Well, I think he's just trying to sort of smoke and mirrors is the best line. You know, I mean, the famous Bob Arum quote of yesterday I was lying, today I'm telling the truth. You know, that's a Bob Arum quote, and I think that sums up that statement perfectly. We have an obligation, and it's only right that Dillian Whyte gets his shot at the heavyweight world title. Now, when you talk about depriving Anthony Joshua of a payday, you know, one is Anthony Joshua firstly has to fight Kubrat Pulev in December. He won't fight again after that till June or July next year. So there is a lot of time in between to make sure we get this mandatory defence. I don't feel it would be right of me to neglect, after nearly 1,000 days of Dillian Whyte as WBC #1, his right to fight for the heavyweight world title because I'm pushing an undisputed fight as well. The truth is, I can't really win. You know, on one hand, people are saying to me, you've got to get Dillian Whyte the World Heavyweight Championship. He's had over 1,000 days as mandatory. He's boxed Povetkin, Chisora, Parker, Rivas, etc. And then on the other hand, you've got people saying to me, you've got to make the biggest fight in world boxing between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. So I just think that morally, Dillian Whyte deserves his shot. But he's still got to beat Alexander Povetkin on August 22nd. This is the toughest fight of his career by a long, long way. And, you know, this is a big banana skin as well. So I believe he should get that shot. The timings from the WBC make that clear, that should be the early part of 2021. And the winner can fight Anthony Joshua in the summer, and it won't actually disrupt Anthony Joshua's plans either. So, you know, and listen, maybe it'll end up being Dillian Whyte against Anthony Joshua for the undisputed. But if Deontay Wilder's not ready, or these guys can't get the money together for Wilder Fury, we'll just do Fury Whyte in December. Great fight, huge fight. But again, it all stems on him beating Povetkin in 12 days' time.
It all stems on them all continuing to win until we get the opportunity to see them. Like it seemed like we were pretty close to Fury and Joshua when Fury made the video. That talk seems to have gone cold. Has it gone cold because of the backlash with regards to Daniel Kinahan's involvement, or was there some other reason?
No, it was just really because both guys have got to fight, and it's still a time away. You know, what we've got is an agreement from both fighters to fight twice. But subject to, obviously everyone agreeing the venue, etc., but also subject to Anthony Joshua beating Pulev and Tyson Fury beating Deontay Wilder. And they're two tough fights. So there's no way around that, really. You know, we've got to fight Pulev as our mandatory. And, by the time that fight comes around, Anthony Joshua would have been out of the ring for over a year. So there is a bit of a pause and freeze on all these big fights at the moment. One, because people have been delayed, but also because we can't be guaranteed to get crowds in anywhere this year. So obviously you can't stage an event like Fury Joshua with no crowds. I think it would be a disservice to those guys in the sport. So I think it sits well to get this fight done this year. Middle of next year, we know we'll be fine, touch wood, crowds will be back, life will be back to normal, and we can make the biggest fight in boxing. But Dillian Whyte does deserve his shot, even more so if he can beat the Russian Povetkin in next week.
Were you surprised by the backlash when Daniel Kinahan's involvement became public?
I mean, he's been in boxing a long time, so to people in boxing, it wasn't a surprise that, at the end of the day, I represent Anthony Joshua, and whoever we have to make a fight with, they will have a representative to negotiate with. That was the person that was put forward by Team Fury. And, you got Carl Frampton, Michael Condon, all these other fighters that he represents as well. So, it wasn't a surprise that we had to deal with him. Obviously, he's taken a step back now, and now I've been told that my negotiations have to take place with Bob Arum, which have been happening I spoke to him last night. So, I don't think that it's slowed anything down. I just think that everyone knows there's business to take care of in the mandatories and of course, the Deontay Wilder fight to make this a reality in 2021.
And was that extra scrutiny unwelcome when you're trying to make big deals like the biggest boxing match of all time?
I'm just focused on making those deals, really, whatever it takes to get that over the line. So I think there's so many distractions in boxing. It's never straightforward. Whether that's controversy, whether that's politics, whether that's heartbreak and disappointment and so forth. So really, we're just focused, and I'm just focused on delivering for Anthony Joshua and delivering him the undisputed championship, which hopefully will happen in 2021.
And maybe him stepping back actually makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, so I guess it takes headlines away, and they would have discussed that as a team. But again, it doesn't matter who I'm told to get a deal over the line with. The focus is on getting that deal over the line. And right now that attention has shifted to Bob Arum. And, we'll continue and try and get it done. Bob's not easy to deal with at times, but he loves a pound note and he'll want to make that fight as well.
Can I just ask you one last one, Eddie, on Povetkin? So Povetkin and Dillian are obviously fighting. They'll enter that bubble on Friday, and I know Dillian will be sparring with Derek Chisora. They're all staying in the same location. I think you'd mentioned that the potential for fireworks at that Holiday Inn, I think. Yeah, it's a disaster, really, but it's something. It's the protocol we have to adopt for the safety of the fighters. So I was actually speaking to Brian about that, about Katie, because normally you'd put the two main event or these big fights, you'd put them in different hotels. But this hotel, they're literally going to be passing each other on in the corridors. And, there's a communal area outside. We've built two gyms in the hotel, a cardio gym and a boxing gym that you can book in and use. So it's going to be really strange, not just to see Dillian Whyte and Povetkin crossing swords in the corridor and, and the communal area, but also Katie Taylor and Delphine Persoon, because let me tell you, Katie Taylor does not want to be around Delphine Persoon next week. But unfortunately, because of the environment we're in and the testing and the isolation procedures, they're going to be bumping into each other a lot next week, as will Whyte Povetkin. We just hope that they can save the punches till the ring.
The behind-the-scenes documentary is going to be better than any of
really
HBO's.
Good. No, we've been filming that, don't worry.
24/7.
Behind the scenes is coming soon, yeah.
Eddie, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
It's Eddie Hearn giving us some thoughts there ahead of Eric Donovan fighting this Friday night on Sky Sports. You can catch that there. We've got to go. It's 2 minutes past 10 here this morning. If you missed anything, we had Andy Mitten on talking about football fan culture, the Sancho deal, where Manchester United are at the moment. Ken Doherty talking very strong on Ronnie O'Sullivan, the World Championships. Eddie Hearn there talking about Eric Donovan, Katie Taylor and the Whyte, Fury, Joshua and Daniel Kinahan situations. If you want to tune in today to OTB Sports Radio, Danny O'Reilly with Alan Quinlan, OTB Gold, a brilliant interview between Brian O'Driscoll chatting with Ethan Asewa just weeks after Asewa wrapped up his career at Leinster. Dadcast coming your way at 3 o'clock. New edition, Mount Rushmore is Wicklow. OTB Gold is Ronnie Delaney, who made it all the way on to the Mount Rushmore of Wicklow, and then OTB Live tonight from 7 o'clock with Joe and the lads. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Champions League, Micheál Moore-Hartig and much more besides. Best of luck.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.